Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the December 19, 2017 meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Najarian.
Present.
Devine.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Sinanian.
Here.
Mayor Garpetian.
Here. Flag salute.
Flag salute will be led by Councilwoman Paula Devine.
Thank you. Everyone stand, please, if you would. Let's pledge allegiance together. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for the invocation. With so many important holidays of various faiths, from the Jewish and Christian and others upon us, and the commercialization of them so prominent in our daily lives, it is sadly all too easy to forget the true meaning of this season. On December 25, 1927, then President Calvin Coolidge had the following to say to our nation about Christmas. Christmas is not a time or a season, but a state of mind, to cherish peace and goodwill, to be plenteous in mercy, is to have the real spirit of Christmas. If we think on these things, there will be born in us a Savior, and over us will shine a star, sending its gleam of hope to the world. Let us remember these words not as they apply just to Christmas, but as they will apply to our actions and decisions today and throughout the coming new year. Let us be mindful of that which we have been blessed with, but only to use it to improve the lives of those less fortunate. Let us promise to respect one another a little bit more, be forgiving a little bit more, be charitable a bit more, so that we can all grow together and continue to make Glendale the wonderful place we have decided to call our home. And most importantly, let us remember and pray for those affected by and who are bravely fighting the wildfires throughout California, as we also pray for those who continue to serve in far-off places in our nation's armed forces. Let their service be safe, their return be swift, and the burden on their lonely families light during these holidays. Amen.
May I please have your report?
The agenda for the December 19, 2017 regular meeting of the Glendale City Council was posted on Friday, December 15, 2017 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. And what's next?
Under presentation and appointments, 3A is agenda preview for the meetings of Tuesday, December 26, 2017.
Ms. Beers?
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we don't have any meetings scheduled for Tuesday, December 26th. We will be back before the City Council for Housing Authority, any special meetings, and the City Council meeting on January 16th. So at this time, we'd like to wish everybody a happy holiday season.
Okay. Thank you. And what's next, please?
3B is State of the Assembly presentation by Assemblymember Friedman.
Very nice. We have a special guest tonight, our former colleague.
Good evening.
Our representative.
Nice to be back.
Welcome. Good evening.
Welcome. I wanted to take the opportunity, as I've just come to the end of my first legislative year, to talk to you a bit about the major accomplishments from the Assembly and my legislation. I also wanted to take the opportunity to thank all of you for everything that you do. I know firsthand that it's really difficult to sit on that side of the dais and to make the decisions that you make for your community. And I want to personally, as a resident of Glendale, to personally thank all of you for the hard work that you do every single year. So this was a very productive year in the legislature. A lot of issues were addressed that haven't been addressed for quite a while, and I wanted to just mention a few of those to you. I do want to go to tell you a bit about some of the legislation that I introduced, and then answer any questions that you might have. So through the three big goals that the legislature had for the year, they were able to accomplish in one sense or another. One was to come up with a housing package. Of a package of bills to help address the housing crisis that we're in California. Now, this is a huge problem across the state. I think that we feel it here in Los Angeles County, and the Bay Area is the other area where it's felt most acutely. But something that I learned being in the Assembly is that this is a crisis in rural areas across the state. It's a crisis in a lot of places. Rents are going up. Housing stock is not nearly what it needs to be for our population. And so there was legislation that was addressed to deal with that. And I'll come back to that and tell you sort of the major thrust of what that legislation was. One of the other big goals was to renew California's seminal cap-and-trade legislation, and this is legislation, an existing program that expired last year to help reduce greenhouse gas emissions across the state. It was renewed this year, but with an added twist, which was that for the first time, local sources of pollution are going to be monitored and addressed. And that was a big effort by people in the environmental justice community to make sure that while we dealt with greenhouse gases, we also dealt with the pollution that really affects people in their day-to-day lives the most, and that's those local sources of pollution, things like pollution from highways, pollutions from industries that are in communities. And so there's a companion piece of legislation to the greenhouse gas bill, which I was a co-author of, to monitor and begin to address those local sources of pollution for the first time. And then the big other priority that was also addressed this year was the bill SB1, which was an increase in the gasoline tax and also some changes in the fee on registering cars. And this was done for the first time, and I think it's been 35 years since this fee was increased. And this goes directly to our roads across California and to transit. And one of the things that I argued for, and a bunch of us were successful in getting, was a much larger chunk of that money than has ever been given before going directly into transit, being public transportation, and also a large chunk being put aside for active transportation, so for bicycling and pedestrian upgrades, something that I know that Rubik is really, and Mr. Najarian is with his work on Metro, are very interested in seeing. But that's going to be a permanent source of funding going into the future, and it's quite a lot of money. We're talking, billions of dollars. And also, as you all know, the cities were successful in lobbying for a larger chunk of that money to stay right here in the municipality so that you can use it on your roads. So that's going to be a major source of funding for road work and road improvements in the future for Glendale. So I think it's, certainly a win for users, all users of transportation. So I want to go back now and just talk about my legislation, and then I'm going to go back to housing again, because I know that that's something that's very much a priority for all of you. So my favorite thing that I was able to accomplish in this last year was getting a $20 million earmark in the park bond that's going to be on the ballot next year to fund phase 3 of the Glendale Narrows Riverwalk project. This will be building a bike from somewhere on the southeastern part of Glendale, a pedestrian and bicycle bridge to Griffith Park. So for the first time, people in our neighborhoods will be able to walk and bike safely to Griffith Park. And as you know, right now, to get to Griffith Park, mostly our options are taking the 134 freeway, which is not always a pleasant way of getting there, or going all the way to Los Feliz Boulevard and going through very congested Los Angeles streets, or going through Burbank in the other direction, which is very far for people that are coming from South Glendale. Now, I know you all have a park and ride lot near the site of one of these bridges. So it's conceivable that with some good planning and infrastructure on the Glendale side, that people will be able to drive to the park and ride lot and walk just several meters across this bridge and be in Griffith Park. Now, Griffith Park, the folks in Los Angeles who run Griffith Park, mostly David Rue and his office, Councilmember David Rue, are planning to run a circulator through Griffith Park. So not only will you be able to walk across the bridge and be in the bottom of Griffith Park, but there will be a shuttle bus that will pick you up and take you to the zoo, the Greek Theater, the observatory, and even to the Red Line. What I understand is that they're planning to also run it into the Red Line in Hollywood. And certainly for people that are cycling, you can get on the LA River bike path and ride to downtown Los Angeles. And once the 8-mile gap is closed that I know Metro's working on, you'll be able to ride your bike safely on a protected bike path all the way from the Glendale Narrows Riverwalk project all the way to Long Beach. So it's a very exciting project for safety, for connectivity, and for the residents on the eastern side of the LA River. And I'm really, really happy to have been able to play a part in it. It's something that I know it's been a priority for a lot of us for a number of years. And I'm just going to mention a few bills that I put forward this year. I'm not going to mention everything, but the ones that I think are of most interest to the residents. First, I'll tell you about a failure. A bill that I introduced, which passed unanimously, the Senate and the Assembly, only to be vetoed by the governor. And when I tell you what it is, I know that I'll be able to hear the groans from all over Glendale. This was a bill that on a driver's second conviction for reckless driving or street racing, it would have required a 30-day mandatory impound of the vehicle. It also would have been the first bill to require that illegal modifications made to make cars into street racing vehicles would have had to been removed before the car would be returned to the owner, and that was vetoed by the governor. It's shocking to me that on the second conviction even, we're going to allow people to continue, not even give them the penalty of taking the car away. And just to remind people, reckless driving is not the same thing as rolling a stop sign or making a right when you're not supposed to. Reckless driving is a criminal offense. It's a misdemeanor. It means that you've driven so obnoxiously that you're putting people in danger. So this was a high priority bill for the district, and I'm sorry to have seen it be vetoed, but we will reintroduce it when we have a new governor, and we have other ideas of how to address traffic safety through legislation in Sacramento. So we've got a bunch of ideas and things we're going to be putting forward this year, and we are absolutely open to any resident that has an idea for legislation that can help tackle our very challenging traffic safety problem here. AB 1414 was a bill that was successfully passed and signed to the governor that helps make solar installations for people on their rooftops more affordable by capping fees that municipalities can put on solar installations. Not that we would have done that here in Glendale, but there are communities that have price gouged people who just want to be able to put solar on their roof. AB 766 was a bill that was also signed into law that helps foster youth, which are really our most vulnerable populations in California, be able to use money, their housing dollars for college dorms and for other college expenses. Believe it or not, if you're a foster youth in California before this bill and you were not emancipated under the age of 18, if you got into college, you had to decide whether you were going to defer entering college or move into a homeless shelter because you lost your state support at that point. So this bill just allows those youth to be able to use the support they would have gotten for college. AB 975 is a bill which is a 2-year bill of mine which protects California's wild and scenic rivers, which right now almost all of them are only under federal protection, and given the Trump administration's desire to roll back a lot of environmental protections, this would have extended those protections into state law. That is now a 2-year bill. And another bill which failed to pass out of the Assembly, believe it or not, was a bill that I put forward to try to have more transparency in campaign finance by requiring candidates for state office to simply have a link on the front page of their websites linking to their campaign donations. We all know that information's out there, but I learned when I was running that a lot of people don't know how to find that information. So this would have literally been a link that would say something like, to find out who donated to my campaign, click this link, and it would have taken visitors directly to that campaign disclosure form, but that failed to get out of the Assembly. And another bill, which is now a 2-year bill, is a bill that seeks to expand the ability of nurse practitioners to practice in California. It doesn't change, the bill doesn't change the type of work they could do, but it just gives them more leeway to perform those tasks without the supervision of a doctor. There are 8 counties, I believe, in California that don't have one obstetrician. In a lot of counties, particularly rural counties, it's nurse practitioners that are providing a lot of direct health care to the residents of those counties through clinics, through Planned Parenthood. What's happening now is that a lot of those clinics have to close because they don't have enough doctors to supervise the nurse practitioners. This bill will seek to allow the nurse practitioners to continue their work, to keep those clinics open and give people access to care that they desperately need. And lastly, I'll mention a series of bills that we put forward that are 2-year bills that are very wide-ranging bills that have to deal with water conservation. You all know from my work on the MWD board that water has been an interest of mine for a long time, and what these bills seek to do is to raise all water agencies in California to a high level of efficiency so that we stop losing water to leaks in our system, and so that all users have to conserve the way that we've conserved here in Southern California. There are still water districts in California that lose 60 to 80% of their water to leaks in their system, and I kid you not. There are still places in California where people do not have their water metered. And so what this legislation will do is to get everybody onto a level playing field so that hopefully we never again have to have mandatory across the board arbitrary percentage reductions in water use. Those times in drought where the governor says everyone now has to reduce 20% or 15%. Well, if you're using water badly, that's not that hard to do, but if you're already efficient, that's a very hard thing to do. So these bills try to have a benchmark and a standard for all users of water in California. We've worked very hard with all the stakeholders across the state. It's not an easy policy. It's going to make a lot of people have to do a lot of work, not GWP so much because they're in good shape, but a lot of water agencies. So we're still working with all the stakeholders, but we're working in conjunction with the governor's office. This has been a priority for Governor Brown as well, and we're very hopeful that this year we'll be able to get that legislation signed and really change how water is viewed in California. Now, I'm just going to briefly move back to the housing bills because I know that's important to all of you. And by the way, if I'm going on too long, just stop me. I'm not insulted. Okay. So the housing package really has three main thrusts. So there's three, I'd say, buckets that these bills go under. The first bucket is funding, in attempts to get more funding out there to build affordable housing for all of you to use in your good work to provide affordable housing. The second bucket is streamlining to speed up the process for projects that are trying to build infill housing. And the third is accountability, to make sure that all cities and all localities are accountable in terms of how they're doing their plans. So there were two main funding bills, Senate Bill 2 and Senate Bill 3, which are permanent sources of funding for affordable housing. And I would recommend that all of you, if you haven't already done it, to really ask staff to take a close look at all the different ways that this money can be used. Because you know how expensive it is to build new units. Some estimates it's up to $800,000 per unit to build new units. It's my understanding that this funding can be used for things like you buying existing housing and stabilizing it, or partnering with developers and entering into covenants where the developers fund most of the project, but maybe you add and you have a 35-year rent stabilization that they voluntarily do in exchange for getting subsidies from you. So the money it can be flexible. And I suggest that you think outside of the box and think of creative ways of really helping to relieve the burden on not just people who fall under that strict term of affordability of low income, but also for our middle income people, our middle class people and working people who are being priced out of our community, because you are allowed to use this money for that population as well. So I would suggest planning staff take a deep dive into this funding and really think about all the different ways that you can stretch it really to its furthest here in the community. There are a couple of other bills that help with streamlining. Primarily, they're aimed at communities that haven't met their RHNA numbers, that haven't done a good job at building housing. You have. This isn't going to do much in Glendale. I know that you're all committed to building housing and affordable housing. There are communities that are very reluctant to add any affordable housing. So that legislation is mostly aimed at those communities. And then there are accountability bills to just make sure that all communities really report how many housing units are being built, that they have accountability in their general plan so that their zoning is honest, that it's honest attempts to allow for housing to be built. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, thank you very much. It's really great to have you back and with this comprehensive report. Are there any questions from our representative in Assembly?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for what you're doing on behalf of us in Sacramento. I was there at the end of the session, last 3 days of session, and I saw that you guys are very busy to passing this, what you were explaining today. And I'm glad that affordable housing is in front of all issues that you are presenting and following. Thank you for that. But I have one problem. You know, we are getting on property taxes, we are getting 13 cents, 13.78 cents of a dollar when it comes here. Mm-hmm. And Burbank and Pasadena, they're getting 17 cents and 21 cents per dollar. And Los Angeles, which you are representing also portion of it, they are getting 25 cents per dollar. So this looks like very unfair to city of Glendale. So I just want to see that you can raise this issue in the Assembly to make this playing field more fair. And so we have to get the fair share of what our property owners or residents of Glendale they are paying. Is that something you can consider? I know you have Los Angeles is represented by 6 other assembly members, so it's very hard if they get 25 cents and we are getting only 13.78 right, to convince them to go along and make everything fair. But we have to try.
Thank you, Councilmember. You're absolutely right. This is a very unfair situation. It's something that when I was on the council, I can remember sitting back there and shaking right my fist in the exact same way. Glendale was penalized for being a low taxing city when Prop 13 was passed, and now we find ourselves in this unfortunate situation. And it's my understanding, and I'm going to turn and look at council, it's my understanding that given that Prop 13 was a ballot measure, that the only way to change that would be another ballot measure. That's my understanding. If you know differently, I'm happy to try, because I think it's fundamentally unfair to Glendale and a number of other cities. And I'm glad that you're bringing it up, because it's very constraining for the city of Glendale and very frustrating. But maybe you could run a ballot measure.
That's what I want to do.
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Devine?
Sure. Thank you, Assemblymember Friedman. Nice to have you back in the chambers again. I think your passion and your dedication is very apparent here tonight. I want to thank you and congratulate you for all you've done in 1 year. I think it's pretty amazing, the job that you're doing there. And I think that we always know that you're up there for us and working for us, and we appreciate that. I have a question about the drive, it's not a tax, but they're thinking about kind of calculating the mileage that we're driving and then putting, finding us, or we have to pay a fee per mileage. Can you kind of explain that legislation that's...
Right. I don't know that it's necessarily legislation. This is something that actually the COGS, SCAG, and a lot of the groups that you're involved in have been talking a lot about over the years. The basic idea is that as people move to electric vehicles, and hopefully at some point we'll be at a place where everybody has electric vehicles, then having a gas tax isn't going to fund our roads. So the thought is, when we don't have gasoline anymore, or we have a lot less of it, then what do we pay? It's always been the idea that the drivers pay for the roads. So what the thought is that they would move to a vehicle miles traveled rather than a gas tax. So if you don't drive much, you pay hardly anything. But if you're a big user and you're driving more, you pay more, just like you really do with the gas tax. If you're somebody that doesn't drive very often, you probably don't use a lot of gas. But what people are feeling is fundamentally unfair, and which SB 1 did change a little bit, is that if you're rich enough, let's say, to afford a Tesla, you're not paying any gas tax, which is why they raised the registration fee on luxury electric vehicles, was to help capture some of that funding. So there's good reasons why you want people to make that shift to electric, and you want to incentivize that. But at some point, when everyone's on electric, we have to find another way to pay for the roads. But we're still quite a ways away from that.
Sure. Quick question.
Councilmember Sinani.
Thank you for being here and giving us this report, Assemblywoman. Why would the governor be opposed to the legislation regarding impounding for 30 days of reckless drivers' cars?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Trying to understand the logic behind it.
Though what his statement said was that right now, under current law, judges have the ability to require that impound. So he thought it was redundant. But our research has shown, and we showed him, that it's almost never done. And that people generally get these cars back in 1 or 2 days. And law enforcement, I think, would, I'm looking around, I don't see anyone from law enforcement on the dice, but law enforcement, I think, would say the same thing, that people tend to get these vehicles back very, very quickly. And he ignored that the current law doesn't require the illegal modifications to be removed. So some of these cars, they're not street legal. They're completely illegal to be driving these cars on the street, and people are using them only for street racing, which is incredibly dangerous. They get the car back in the exact same condition.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you, Assemblymember. It's nice to have you back in chambers. You didn't talk about the issues that have been in the news lately, the sexual harassment. We applaud your chairing the subcommittee on sexual harassment. I know you were a champion of that while you were on the dais here. What do you see happening in Sacramento? Do you see more people coming down, more abusers being
Now with the flu.
being turned in and resigning?
I have to just say, I can't go to a lunch, a holiday party, to Ralph's without somebody asking me about what's happening with sexual harassment in the Capitol. There's so much interest and so much focus on this right now. As for whether or not anybody else is going to go down over it, I have no idea. I would say that I hope that if somebody's been acting as a predator towards staff and to the public, I hope that they do lose their office. I think that that's legislators should be held to a high standard, and nobody should be acting that way when it comes to subordinates. We had a hearing, which if anybody's interested, I would recommend watching. It was actually extremely interesting. The hearing was over 6 hours long, and we had testimony from women in the Capitol, from our Capitol community, that had experienced sexual harassment, for years, and sometimes some pretty outrageous examples of it came, and they were extremely brave to get up and tell their stories in public, because these women have nothing to gain by doing this. I mean, it's a very difficult thing to do, to come forward and tell these stories, and we've certainly had women now coming forward and talking about this privately to investigators. And now we're going to be now that we sort of have talked a lot about what the problem is, and we took a deep dive into our policies, because the Capitol, like any private business, has very strong sexual harassment policies, or so they thought. So taking a deep dive into that and talking to experts and finding out where these policies tend to fail was very, very important, and I think illustrative for any agency, any business to really think about that. And the next steps, we're having a series of 3 to 4 meetings in January to talk about how we change our policies and our procedures and our training to change our culture and make sure that we have a more protective environment for people to come forward, that we don't have the kind of retaliation that we've heard about, unfortunately, that we obviously can offer due process and fairness to people that are accused, and that we have real accountability, which is what's lacking right now. We have some accountability with staffers, but when it comes to elected members, as you all know, it's very difficult. You're not employees of the city of Glendale. I'm not an employee of the legislature. We serve really at the pleasure of the people. So how do you then, how do you hold people accountable? And that's what we're going to be discussing. And I've certainly got my ideas about that, and I've been public talking about them. But I also think it's important that I, as the chair of this committee, have my listening ears on and listen to the stakeholders and the experts and the victims who now come forward in the next several sessions to give their advice and to give their suggestions. But I am confident that we're going to come out of this on the other end with what's going to be a model for all public agencies to follow, to make sure that you have independence when it comes to investigations, that you have people who can weigh in that don't have a dog in the hunt, in the fight. Because if you think about it, even here, who would hold you accountable? Mr. Garcia, Ms. Beers, they work for you. They're direct reports. You all work with each other, and you have a dependency on each other for votes and for everything else, or not. But whatever you do will always be seen by someone as unfair. There has to be a neutral source who's outside of that politics and who's outside of your influence and mine when it comes to the legislature, who can weigh in. So I think that's what we'll be doing, is setting up that independent kind of accountability. And also the question of, when do the voters get to know, which I think is really important, because misbehavior flourishes when there's no transparency. And the people who hold elected officials accountable the best are the voters. So those are the issues that we're going to be taking a very close look at in the next several sessions.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very interesting.
So, welcome back again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Great to have you here. Councilmember Najarian, myself, and Councilmember Devine, we participated in the press conference for the $20 million bridge project, and we want to thank you for, we thanked you on this dais for what you did, and putting that in the forefront of that bill, the package to receive $20 million to build the bridge. We acknowledge that here. I just want to make sure that you're aware of that. As far as SB 1 goes, we are, as it was mentioned, we are trying to, do away with the fossil fuels, and then yet we are fixing our roads with gas tax. And I know there is some talk at SCAG level that for miles traveled, fees or what have you. But I think if they do that now, I think they will penalize the middle class even more, because people who live far away from their work because of the housing issues, they're the ones who drive the most. So I don't know, it came up in SCAG, and we had a heavy discussion on it. I think we need to be really careful on that taxing again when we're paying the gas tax, and start looking at on the how can we tax the electric vehicles at this time. I mean, the registration went up, but it's a very small number, and we have to look at other sources to be a permanent source, because fossil fuel sources is not going to be a permanent source for us. As far as cap and trade, we really fought hard this time. We were going to go against it at SCAG. We didn't want to support it. But we were promised that we will get our fair share of the cap and trade in Southern California. Last go around, it was less than 30%. Most of it went to Northern California, and we know the reason. The governor is from there, the lieutenant governor is from there, the two state or U.S. senators are from there. So most of our funding goes up there. Even with the 9% tax credit, in March, the funding, 85 to 90% goes to Northern California, but they have a lot less projects than we have down in Southern California. There's a lot more competition down here. So we're not getting our fair share. So what I'm trying to ask here is, I know you do that, but please keep fighting for our rights down here so we will get our fair share of the taxes that our constituents generate.
Absolutely. And in fact, just yesterday, I sat down with Metro, with a bunch of the folks at Metro to talk about, I'm on the Transportation Committee in Sacramento, to talk about how with transportation dollars, we certainly have seen that, where a lot of the transit dollars has gone up to Northern California and not, as much in Southern California, where we have the majority of the population and certainly the majority of the traffic. So we need to make sure that we do get our fair share of the resources given the population and the tremendous need, and the amount that we contribute to the state's economy. So I absolutely agree with you, and thank you for voicing that again.
Thank you. And also from the SB2 and SB3, are there any fundings to help developers to build entry-level ownership housing instead of just a rental, affordable rental housing, to help them build entry-level? I'm not talking about the poor or the homeless. I'm talking about the two-income family, young families that they cannot pay their rent. So if there is any funding available for them to develop entry-level, I mean, even condos are $700,000-800,000 nowadays.
Right.
So if there's such a funding, I think we want to get our hands to some of it and build maybe a few projects down here for our constituents as well.
Right. It's my understanding that there is. That's why I suggest that you have your staff, have planning staff or legal or whoever you think the appropriate staff is, to really do a deep analysis of where the money can be spent so that you have all the options on the table, even for things that are non-traditional, like partnering with developers or partnering on even existing housing stock to stabilize that housing stock. Which I think that in areas where you're worried about gentrification, pushing people out or increasing rents, that's an opportunity for you to help subsidize some of that possibly. So, take a really close look at what's allowable with that money, because you're going to start seeing that funding coming in, and it's going to be a steady source and a permanent source of funding.
Very nice. And lastly, can you please explain to our residents what is a 2-year bill?
Thank you. A 2-year bill is when, for whatever reason, you decide you have a 2-year bill cycle. Most of your legislation you put through in the first year, and so a lot of our legislation went through and was signed into law this year. But then occasionally there's a bill that you decide not to bring forward for some reason. So we have several bills that are sort of more complicated, larger bills that we decided that we needed to wait, either because we weren't ready with the policy yet, like with the water bills, where the policy just wasn't quite there yet, because there's 3 bills. They're very big policies, very sort of sea changes in how we think about water resources. So we wanted to take the time to make sure that we got this right. We have another bill, which is a housing bill, which tries to set up a cap and trade-like system for affordable housing dollars. It's a really interesting concept and something that I think would help Glendale get more funding, but we just weren't quite there with the policy yet. And with the Wild and Scenic Rivers, it was the same thing. With Wild and Scenic Rivers, the policy was there, but we had a lot of opposition from a small group of people, and we felt that if we took a step back and really worked with them so that they understood the law a little bit better, that they would drop their opposition. So we decided to wait and work with them to make sure that everybody was on the same page about what current federal law was.
Thank you very much.
That's a 2-year bill.
Any more questions or comments?
Thank you.
Well, again, I hope everybody has a really happy holiday, a really safe holiday, and thanks again for all the work you're doing. I hope you all get some well-deserved rest over the next month, and we'll see you again in January. And if you ever have questions, of course, you all have my cell phone numbers. Don't be afraid to use them if you have any questions or anything that you need me to help with. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thanks very much
Good
for
night.
being here. Really appreciate it. What is next on the agenda, please?
3C is a proclamation for Fire Prevention Week.
Okay, who is here from fire? I don't see anybody. I don't see it.
Battalion Chief Marchand is here,
Yes.
and a whole lot of folks behind him.
Floor is all yours, Chief.
Is mine? Okay.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, city staff, it's my honor, it's my privilege to stand amongst this group as the fire marshal of the city of Glendale. And this proclamation that we are about to receive, documenting the council's commitment to the safety of our citizens. The 13 of us assigned to the Fire Prevention Bureau work tirelessly to maintain fire and life safety standards every day here within the Jewel City. Yet despite the Class 1 codes and standards that we enforce, fires throughout the city, the county, the state, and the nation have been trending upward. This time of year especially, as we've entered the holiday season, the Glendale Fire Department will be, by utilizing your proclamation, better equipped to remind our citizens that the largest percentage of deaths in residential properties is caused by fire. Therefore, we've joined with the National Fire Protection Association's Project Holiday in an effort devoted to eliminating death, injury, and property damage during the holiday season. We encourage all of our citizens to familiarize themselves with these potential fire risks by calling us at our Fire Prevention Bureau office or by visiting our website at www.glendalefire.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you for being here. It's my honor to present this proclamation to you and rest of the staff. And thank you for everything you do for our community to keep all of us safe. So with that, I would like to read the proclamation. It reads, whereas the City of Glendale, California is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in, visiting the city, and whereas the United States Fire Departments responded to 352,000 home fires in 2016, according to the National Fire Protection Association, and whereas home fires in the United States resulted in 2,735 civilian deaths in 2016, and whereas home fire escape plans should be developed by all members of the household, and whereas a home fire escape plan provides the skill set and know-how to quickly and safely escape a home fire situation, and whereas a home fire escape plan includes 2 exits from every room in the home and a path to the outside from each exit, smoke alarms on all required locations, and meeting place outside where everyone in the home will meet upon exiting. And whereas practicing a home fire escape plan twice a year ensures that everyone in the household knows what to do in a real fire situation. And whereas the members of the Glendale Fire Prevention Bureau are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and education. And whereas the 2017 Fire Prevention Week theme, "Every Second Counts, Plan 2 Ways Out," effectively serves to educate the public about the vital importance of developing a home fire escape plan with all members of the household and practicing it twice a year. And now, therefore, I, Vartan Garpetian, Mayor of the City of Glendale, do hereby proclaim December 17, 2017 as Fire Prevention Week throughout this community. I urge all of the people of Glendale to test their smoke detection devices and to develop a home fire escape plan with all members of the household and practice it.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Agajanian,
Members of the
would you like
council.
to present the proclamation, please?
We do, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I do have a speaker card on this item. Chinook Ramirez. Is Ramirez? Yeah. Three minutes, please.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I just would like to humbly applaud and salute these wonderful firefighters who tackled these raging wildfires that were astronomical. We have not seen this in quite some time. I mean, you are supermen in the way that you've managed, climbed, and just trekked through those entire mountains under truly dire situations. I applaud you. I don't know how the hell you did it, but I am amazed. I am floored. And I am so sorry for that one fireman that was killed and from the many that were injured. This was truly a sad occasion for the homeowners and those who lost their homes and those who became homeless. I just want to say thank you for what you've done. You dedicate your lives, you live like monks, and you go out there and tackle these raging infernos. You ought to be applauded. I mean, you've got good karma. I just applaud you, man. You are truly amazing, especially what I saw on TV. You make people cry. Thank you, firemen. You got huevos. I applaud you. God bless you and your families, and Merry Christmas. Should you need any pilots, Gillespie Daredevil pilots extraordinaire from El Cajon, San Diego. You could get some great pilots from there because you do need pilots to douse the fires, and also from the military, should you need pilots. God bless America, and God bless you, fire department and pilots. You are wonderful, superb, and brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ramirez. What is next, please?
3D is Mayor's Commendation for Glendale Adventist Academy Girls Volleyball Team.
All right. Is the coach here by any chance? Come on up, please, and bring your team.
Thank you very much for having us today. We're so happy to be here. I'm Coach Jared Luquette, and this is my championship volleyball team.
Tell us just a little bit about the tournament. Where was it? How many games? And
Yeah, so we're the CIF champions for Division 9 for the Southern California section.
Okay.
And more importantly, we're also the runner-up for the regional finals of the state volleyball tournament. So we are one away from the state championship game.
Wow. Come on up.
The reason why it's so special because this is our first championship, CIF championship for the school. And it's the first time that a team has made it this far. So
Great. I just want to
say something.
Just wanted to thank you all for representing Glendale. You put Glendale on the map again. Thank you all for getting ready for this tournament and representing Glendale well. And I do have a mayor's commendation for you. Idris, congratulations on your outstanding 2017 state playoff run. I commend your school's passion, hard work, and dedication in preparing for this tournament. I thank you for representing Glendale and serving as a shining example to all. On behalf of the City of Glendale, I wish you continued success on all of your future tournaments. What is next, please?
Next is Mayor's Commendation for Grounds Maintenance Crew.
Grounds maintenance crew.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
did you want to give the girls a city pin?
Oh, yes, yes, of course. I'm sorry. It's
Go for it.
Go.
no. I mean,
No, it's okay. Go.
Weren't you a volleyball coach?
I was. Councilman Najarian just asked me if I was a volleyball coach, and I said yes, and I had told the girls that as well in the Alhambra School District at San Gabriel High School. And I coached for about 10, 12 years. And I was asking them about this team, about their who's the hitter, and she's a freshman. So that means that you have, how many seniors are on your team? Any seniors? 1, 2, 3, about 5. The rest are juniors and sophomores. So you have a good chance of doing this again. But congratulations, because I know how hard it is, how much work you have to put in, all those practices. I was just sitting here thinking, what was it? Bump, set, hit. Do you still? Bump, set, yeah.
Did you
Well,
bring home any
congrats.
Southern Section championships?
We did. The girls
Oh,
varsity
good for
did.
you.
Yes, and actually I didn't happen to be that coach. I coached the junior varsity, but we had a perfect season one year, 22-0. So that was pretty good, I think, too. Don't you? Yeah. But congratulations, job well done, coach. Congrats. You're the king.
all right. Let's get back to the next item, which is the commendation for the ground maintenance crew. Mr. Peplo.
Mr. Mayor, before Mr. Peplo
Yes.
says anything, thank you so much for having the accommodations for the staff this evening. Mr. Peplo, as we call him, the magic maker of the holidays, every year on his own time decides some sort of a theme for City Hall and the rest of the city facilities that are around City Hall. And he works on it all year long on his own time to make sure that the weekend the weekend after Thanksgiving, he comes to City Hall when no one's here, and he brings a whole bunch of elves with him to help him. And they literally put all the decorations up while we're all out shopping and spending time with family. He's here at City Hall decorating it so that when we walk in Monday morning, this year it's the enchanted halls of City Hall. It's just absolutely beautiful. And so it's great that you are thanking him for all of the hard work along with all of his helpers, and Armin's here this evening as well. So I just wanted to say that as you get into it, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. I just want to add that we were at the Japanese garden, the tea garden in Brown Park, and I know you guys work really hard to keep it clean and maintain it, but there is a bridge, a very famous bridge over the pond that was built in your garage. I'm going to let you talk about it just a little bit. So, Mr. Peplo, floor is all yours.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you very much for this, and thanks for the opportunities. Yeah, the bridge was actually wood that was going to go in the trash from the Adult Recreation Center, and so we had quite a bit of it, and I thought, well, we could use a bridge there. So we built that bridge.
That's a great feature of that
Yeah,
area.
it was
so it looks
actually
nice.
the original plans did have a bridge somewhere around there. So with the material that we had, we built it. It was fun. It was a really fun project. And this is too. Thank you for letting me do this. I enjoy doing the lobby, and it's just really fun. We started it actually like 14 years ago, but we just do the plaza, come in and put in live trees and stuff like that, and then it expanded into the lobby, and we have a lot of fun. And Armin, couldn't do it without him. It took 5 truckloads from the yard, our parks yard, down to get up here. 5 truckloads to bring everything that we needed here. Last year it was 12 truckloads. So.
Can I ask you, where did you get all the trees? Because they're all real.
Yeah, they're all real, and they're.
Majin? You weren't up in Duke Majin.
Yeah, did you see?
Well, they might,
those
a lot of
trees?
them are probably going to wind up in Duke Majin because they are all going to be planted in the parks
Oh, they are.
afterwards. Yeah, so
Oh,
those are
wonderful.
once we wash all the flocking off of them, they'll be planted in the parks. So, yeah,
That's
and there's live holly and camellias and juniper, the ground covered junipers in there as well. So that'll all go out in the park. So it was really fun. Yeah, and actually, thank you very much for letting me do it because I do have a great time doing it. It's a lot of fun.
It looks great, and everybody enjoys it. So with that, I have a commendation for you. In recognition of your passion and hard work in helping City Hall transform into a magical winter wonderland, I commend your ability to instill the holiday spirit in the hearts of our visitors. On behalf of the City of Glendale, thank you, and I wish you happy holidays. Thank you, Mr. Pepper.
Thank you very much.
And I do have commendations for everyone else that helped you: Jose Carrillo, Mario Gonzalez, Daniel Garcia, Alejandro Aguayo, Alonso Aguilar, Eric Ubilus, Anthony Spencer, Dante Soria, Marcela Medina, Armin Takchian. Oh, that was the last one. Last but not
The
least.
elves, those are the
So-
elves?
Yes, yes. I'm going to leave this with you as well. Please present this to everyone else. What is next, please?
At 3F is a announcement. American Public Works Association, Southern California chapter recognizes Councilmember Najarian as the 2017 top elected official of the year and the Public Works Department of Glendale for their Proposition 84 project.
Okay, Ms. Beers, or should I go to Mr. Golanian?
Either way, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, we're very excited. A number of us had the opportunity to attend the luncheon last week to celebrate our very own Councilman Najarian receive a very nice recognition. So we were all there, and he received that recognition, I believe it was last Thursday. And we were also there to support Public Works in receiving the Prop 84 project of the year as well, and Rubik can talk to you about that a little bit.
Yes, we were all there, and I want to just mention that Councilmember Najarian, our colleague, represented the city really well, and he received the top elected official award. And Rubik, I know there were so many different projects. I think our Green Street demonstration project was one of the best projects that we received an award for, and I'm proud of that, and I want to pass you the mic so you can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor,
give
members
us
of City Council.
A little more information.
Yes, as was noted by Ms. Beers and Mayor, our Green Street demonstration project that was recently completed on Harvard Street and Louise Avenue received the Best Project of the Year award from APW, American Public Works Association, for sustainability element of that project. It takes a village to get these projects done. There are two members of the team who are present here, but I'd like to acknowledge the rest of the team. So essentially, the designer and the project manager were Sarkis Oganessian and Mark David. The construction manager, management supervisor was Gary Edsel. The senior inspector was Tom Cazares, and the person who lived day in and day out during the construction of the project was Ara Rostam, who are not here, but I'd like to call up these two individuals to the podium if you would,
Okay,
please.
come on up, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Madam, members of the City Council. I'd like to thank you for recognizing the hard work that the Public Works staff does on a daily basis for the city of Glendale and the city of Glendale residents.
Thank you as well on behalf of Public Works. Thanks for working.
Thanks very much. I do have a card, speaker card. Arda is here from Senator Portantino's office. Arda?
Good evening, Mayor Garpetian and council members. On behalf of Senator Portantino, I'd like to congratulate the city's Public Works Department for being recognized by the American Public Works Association Southern California chapter for their Prop 84 project. I would also like to present Councilman Najarian with a certificate of recognition on behalf of the senator for being named the 2017 Top Elected Official of the Year. Your vision and advocacy for a more advanced multimodal transportation system has resulted in significant improvements within our communities. Congratulations and best wishes, Councilman.
Thank you. Let me say a few words. This is really, it's really a misnomer. I mean, it's really unfair to be selected as the top elected official because, as we all know, that not one elected official can make a project go forward. It needs a strong team, a good team, strong team on city council, strong leadership from the mayors, and I've been through many mayors as a city councilman, also a mayor myself. It needs a good, strong city manager, great public works director, and I've been fortunate enough to have been around long enough, perhaps, to accumulated some good projects with good teams, and I'm just, you know, I left the crown at home. I didn't want to be too ostentatious, but it's really unfair. It's really something that we all should share. And a lot of the great work and great projects that we've done right here in Glendale, the Prop 84 Green Streets as just one small example of all the other great things we've done in the city. Thank you.
Councilmember Devine.
Thank you. I did want to mention, Councilmember Najarian, that you were gracious enough in the interview in the news press to thank your fellow council members, and I appreciated that, even though I probably wasn't here for a lot of that, but I thought it was very kind of you, so thank you.
And I just want to add my voice to the rest of my colleagues and our staff also in congratulating Councilmember Najarian on this award. It's very well deserved. Congratulations.
And Rubik, too.
Rubik.
Yeah, Rubik, too.
And you too. Okay, what's next, please?
Mr. Mayor, on item 4, consent items is following a routine and may be acted upon by one motion. Any member of council or the audience requesting separate consideration may do so by making such request before a motion is proposed.
Okay, is there a motion to move the consent
Yes, I
item?
would like to move items 4A, B, C, D, if there is no objection.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Zagajanian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. What's next, please?
Next is city council and staff comment.
Any comments? Who would like to go first?
Oh, okay, I'll go first then. Carrying on this theme with Public Works, and I also want to mention the GWP for all of the services that they have provided during this wind situation that we've had in the last few days. We've had trees down, we've had houses and cars damaged, we've had loss of electricity, really dangerous situations, and our crews, Public Works, GWP, were out there all hours, day and night, making sure that streets were cleared, electricity was on, and all of the services that we take for granted, they were out there working on. So thank you all very, very much. I want to congratulate Walk by Glendale. I attended, I didn't take part in, I just attended their recent Christmas ride. It started at Nibley Park, and it was a family ride The kids had all their bikes decorated. Santa was there. They had about 75 cyclists, so it was a really great event. And I just want to thank them for doing that every year as a family event. We all, let's see, Mayor Garpetian and Councilmember Agajanian attended the Japanese Festival at Brand Park on Sunday, where our Council General Chiba actually demonstrated his martial arts expertise, and he was very good, wasn't he? But I wanted I have suggested to staff that perhaps we should look into having a cherry blossom festival, because we have beautiful trees in the park, by the tea house. And so we're going to be doing a bit of research and seeing if maybe we can host a special cherry blossom festival in the park. I think that would be great. And last but not least, Mayor Garpetian and Councilmember Sinani and I all attended the unveiling of the brand new Hollywood Burbank Airport. This is an important step in marketing for the airport for its impressive proximity to many Southern California areas, and it's important for travelers and tourists to recognize these facts. So it is now officially the Hollywood Burbank Airport. And thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Devine. Who wants to go next? Councilmember Najarian.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, I think by now we've all heard about the tragedy in the state of Washington involving the Amtrak train which derailed falling on the I-5 freeway. There were apparently 3 fatalities. It appears as though the cause of the accident, although it's very early, was due to overspeed by the train, which would have been prevented had the implementation of positive train control, PTC, been installed on that train. The trains that run through Glendale are all equipped with PTC, both the freight lines, Metrolink, as well as the Amtrak down here. And so perhaps at a future meeting in the month of January or February, you'll permit me to just explain and give a brief update as to what PTC is and how it's being used through our city of Glendale.
That would be great. We would really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Councilmember Najarian. Anybody else?
Sure.
Councilmember Sinani.
Just a quick note on the Hollywood Burbank Airport. It was great to do the unveiling of the new name. It turns out, well, it doesn't turn out, we knew it, but this is the old name, so we brought back the old name and officially inaugurated the old name for Hollywood Burbank Airport, and everything that Councilmember Devine said is the case. It's a very important transportation hub for not only the city of Glendale and our residents, but also for the region. I do want to express my sincerest and deepest condolences to our Chief Fish, who you'll notice is not in the audience today. He usually comes to each one of our council meetings. His mother, Jean Fish, passed away, so my condolences to the Fish family. And also want to actually, I'm seeking support of one or more of my fellow council members on this very, very important issue, and this is what it is. If you recall, shortly after our president took over, President Trump, he took the United States out of the Paris Agreement, a commitment that had been made years ago, and one that strove to achieve a healthy sort of level of emissions which would reverse the increasing speed of climate change and stabilize the climate. And as a result of this, I requested my fellow council members' support to assess to and join the mayor's National Climate Action Agenda. And we did. We joined the agenda, and I personally take it very seriously. Our commitment to stopping climate change or slowing it down is an important one. It's important for us. It's more important for our children and for our planet. And As I'm looking at the draft EIR for our Grayson Power Plant, I'm a little concerned. I'm actually quite concerned because it looks like this permutation of the repowering of Grayson will result in higher emissions, which I think runs counter to our commitment to the Paris Agreement. And therefore, I'm seeking the support of one of my council members, fellow council members, to instruct staff to pause with the Grayson, with the process that we're going forward on Grayson, not stop it, but pause it, and come back with an exhaustive, comprehensive analysis of all the alternatives that are out there, which will achieve our goal of limiting emissions and decreasing them and complying with the increasing demands that are imposed, thankfully imposed on us by our state authorities, and at the same time to make sure that it's not, cost prohibitive. It's not such where our residents will be detrimentally impacted by the results. So I think we need to look at, again, comprehensively look at all technologies and practices which will make this possible for us, and then decide how we want to proceed, because I think we've already so far committed serious resources to the repowering of Grayson, and we're still committing serious staff resources in preparing it for something which we may turn out to be the wrong option for us. So
I'll second that with the caveat, if we haven't already done that, if that hasn't already
I haven't seen it. If you've seen it, remind me when that was done.
the mayor's, Paris
No,
mayor's.
no,
part,
no,
or-
no,
or-
I'm talking about the
study,
studies,
comprehensive
the
study
studies.
for
So I would
alternatives.
second that, yes.
I mean, pausing the entire process
no, no,
to
no.
study, because that's what he's.
That is what I'm asking for.
Oh,
Pausing the entire thing in order to.
Maybe have Mr. Zern briefly address kind of
Okay.
what we're doing, because to Mr. Sinani's question, I mean, that is part of the comprehensive environmental analysis.
right.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we are at what I would say the home stretch of the EIR process, which addresses and this is a process that isn't driven by the city of Glendale, it's driven by the state of California. And in that evaluation, you will see all of the impacts of the project, whether it's on the air, the water, whatever it may be, traffic. It also looks at alternatives, which we can have a very robust discussion. That's coming to you on March the 6th. The comments are being responded to now. We plan to release those to the public so they have at least a month in advance before we come to meet with you. There's no commitment that's required, but that meeting will be an opportunity for you to get a comprehensive review of the environmental impacts, exactly what they mean. Because I think some people are looking at some numbers which mean one thing, and there are other numbers totally being disregarded that would I'm not saying would change your mind, and I don't think you're looking to have your mind changed, but more give you a broader perspective on the whole project. So I think it's unfair to focus on one particular issue or one very minute particular issue in when you can look at the whole picture and then make your decision, and that was our objective. And it'll be a very robust conversation, Mr. Sinani, and actually as robust as you want it to be, but it'll be a thorough presentation, and we can go through and dissect that. Inside of that document is also alternatives. So we have to list alternatives.
Does the draft EIR have those alternatives?
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
I don't think it's deep enough and it's comprehensive enough. To
Well,
be honest.
then the final EIR will expand on that even more. And then that discussion, we can discuss each and every one of those alternatives.
So, and I'll just say this, and I've asked for support. Whether the support is there or not is my colleague's choice. It's okay, but this process is geared towards repowering of Grayson. So the goal is to repower Grayson. It's not to let's look at what the universe is, what technologies are being offered to us, what our alternatives is, and based on that, let's decide whether we want to move forward with the repowering of Grayson.
And
those are two different things. Those are very two different ways to approach this issue. I'm saying I think the right thing to do in order for us to remain committed to the Paris Accord, and something that when I proposed it, I took it seriously. So it wasn't just a piece of paper or a feel-good issue that I was advising or I was calling for our council to adopt. It was serious. It's a commitment. You commit to it, you stick by it. But when we're saying, okay, this is the EIR for the repowering of Grayson, and by the way, these are some issues that you may want to consider. Still, at the end of the day, the goal is the repowering of Grayson, as opposed to, okay, where are we going? Where are we? Where will we be tomorrow? What the technologies are going to be, and is it worth investing $500,000 and increasing our emissions somewhere from 25 to 70%?
And I think
$500 million, that's what I meant.
$500
million. $500
in the document, well, go back to the IRP, the Integrated Resource Plan that we started with that reviewed all of those items, and then coming into a more refined process through the EIR process where we talk about those again. We have to go through the EIR process to repower Grayson. Repowering Grayson is one aspect of an integrated plan. There's no question today, as the law stands, we have to have 50% renewables by law by 2030. So that we're working towards. It's very possible that could be 100% if the state legislature is able to pass that legislation.
By 2045.
Or 2045, or some variation of that. There's some trouble on that one, but some variation, carbon-free versus renewable. And so we looked at that, our portfolio, our proposed portfolio, our transmission restrictions in totality with the repowering of Grayson. And I think that one of the things that has been mentioned that I haven't heard anybody, even opponents, say, we don't think that you can function without a Grayson. It's just what size is that facility? Those options are also in the EIR. So sizing that facility from something a third of what we're asking or proposing to the existing 250 megawatts, and then combining that with some other technology. And I can tell you this, without getting into details because we're not quite there yet, technology has changed dramatically in 3 years. And I'm not sure that all the council's aware, but I built in to this process 3 years ago the option to always be able to go back and look at that technology again, and if it had gotten to a point where it became more desirable economically or operationally, we could fold that back in. So let me give you one example. Siemens contract, of which you all approved the limited notice to proceed. That was for 4 operating units. That contract allows us, without any penalties, without any restrictions, to eliminate those up to 2 of those units. We can eliminate up to 2 of those units without any ramifications. No legal ramifications, no cost ramifications, nothing. Why would we do that? Because if certain technology advanced during the period from when we did the IRP till today, we might have an opportunity to change our mind and not be penalized for it, have to start all over again, and that type of thing. And we've built that into the EIR as well. So, for instance, without, again, divulging too much, battery storage is a different story today than it was 3 years ago. It's a different story today than it was 18 months ago.
Yeah.
And I have been out pounding the pavement looking at battery storage facilities, as many as I can find, mostly those through Edison. They are the ones that have put the most investment into it. But 2 things have happened. Their investment has made the economies of scale a lot more attractive to us as a smaller utility. They've also shown how operationally you can integrate the batteries into your overall grid system with a couple different options. That makes a big difference to us. That now changes possibly what I would tell you when we came to you in the EIR process as another option you might have today that we didn't think we had 3 years ago because the situation was different. So what I'm getting at is there's plenty of flexibility in this, all the way up to and including go back and look at it. But I guess my advice to you, my recommendation to you would be, we are this far along in the EIR process. Let us present that to you, go over all of the environmental impacts, and then we can make a decision from there where we want to go. Do we want to go forward? Do we want to pick an option? Do we want to go back and study certain aspects more closely?
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
A little bit earlier you said about Siemens.
Yes, sir.
2 of the units, there are 4 units, 2 of them we can have it and eliminate it, but the other 2 definitely we have to have it?
Under the contract, so when you price out a contract, so we bought 4. We wanted 4 originally. And in that contract, if you go back to change order and say we've decided to reduce the contract, oftentimes you'll pay penalties for that. We don't have to pay penalties if we reduce that. So we built that into the contract.
We are obligated to take the 2.
No, you haven't given a final notice to proceed. That final notice to proceed will come later in the spring. So you don't have any obligation to do anything right now. But what I'm saying from a costing perspective, if you said we wanted a little bit smaller gas-fired generation and maybe some other options, because as I said, things have changed, you have the ability to tell through this contract to say we want to reduce with no penalties. So that was built into also the construction contract.
To the issue which Councilman Sinanian brought up, so the way I understand it, let's say in March, there will be a report in front of us.
Correct.
And we can change that or ask for new study.
You absolutely can.
We are not obligated to
You have no
follow
obligation.
through that.
No, sir. No, sir. You can direct us a different way. You can ask us to go out on a particular option or options and look at them more thoroughly. But we will present all of that to you from the actual environmental impacts and not just somebody taking one sentence in a document and giving you a gross number. We'll give you the details of what that means. I'll give you a comparison about Grayson today versus Grayson proposed, and how those offsets are different, and what the impacts and what's driving those impacts. And then you'll see the alternatives, and then you can make a choice as to whether you want to go forward with the project, a variation of the project, or not. Don't go forward at all and study further some other aspect of the project, another alternative.
Councilmember Najarian.
May I make a suggestion? I understand that it's coming March 6th, but we've all seen those preview shows, right? Preview to the Oscars. Can you come back in February without giving us the conclusions of what you're going to be saying in March, but come back and tell us what we're going to be presented with, what type of things, that we'll be getting options, we'll be getting air quality evaluations, we'll be getting technology issues, just so you sort of set the stage for us and the public to better understand what we're going to be presented with on March 6th.
I would be more than
It's
happy.
kind of what you're doing now,
right?
But because this is not a simple issue to grasp, the EIR is a complicated document driven by state law. But come to us a few weeks before you drop the bomb on us, not the bomb, before you give your full presentation, and let us know what we're going to be presented with. One of the issues was alternatives. Let us know what type of things we're going to be seeing in the alternatives. Let us know about the air quality issues. Let us know about the power needs issues. Let us know about the cost issues to set the stage for us. So when you come in March, not just us, but the public as well, because they're very interested in this. Clearly, we've had a lot of comment on that. So we have a little better understanding about what we're going to be presented. And perhaps some of these issues that are raised by Mr. Sinanian can be ready to be focused and concentrated on when we do get that ultimate download of information that you're going to give us.
I'd be happy to do that. The schedule has us releasing the responses to the comments the first week of February. I would shoot for that day, which would be a month before our projected council date to come back with the draft EIR or the final EIR. So I could give you a preview a month ahead of time if that was.
It would help me. I don't know about my colleagues, but even having been through this and other EIRs for many different projects, I think it's good for my understanding and analysis just to get the framework, to understand what this EIR does, what our options will be in March as a council, and it, because there's just a lot of information going around. I think if we can focus it and compartmentalize it, it'll make for a better analysis by all of us and the public as well.
I would be happy to do that.
Councilmember Agajani.
In November, when you announced that there is cutoff date of November 20th, I guess, for the public comments, right? And I said at that time, what's this rush for? And still, I wanted to make sure that we are not going to rush into this project. We have to take time and look through every alternative, as has been mentioned here, especially considering the GE and Siemens, both of them, they are scaling down their gas units section. They are letting some of their employees to go. It means it's not I mean, the cities, they are not buying, or the companies, they are not buying those units anymore as they used to buy. And I will bring the report that why they're reducing, how many employees they let them go, because cities, they don't want to get involved with this as much as we are anxious to get those units. So we have to look through the alternatives and pick up the best solution for our city and for the public, specifically $500 million, and then this is a bond, right?
Correct.
And by the time we pay back, will be $1 billion. And I just wonder, still I'm wondering, who will pay for it? This, residents of Glendale should pay for it, I assume. Am I right?
Well, that's
Sorry,
that.
Mr. Mayor, sorry, members of council, we're getting into a lot of policy discussion.
Since
I think the question is, do we want to have a report?
And I'm going to reiterate it again, and I guess, whatever happens, happens. I think the EIR is the EIR for the Grayson repowering. There's no escaping it. At the end of the day, it's going to be geared towards Grayson being repowered and what can we do otherwise. I think an analysis of an important issue like this has to stand on its own. So the alternatives, or sort of the universe of options, has to be a study that's separate from the EIR in order to be objective and be comprehensive and stand on its own. So for that purpose, again, I'm asking my colleagues if so that we don't have to discuss this issue in March and say, well, why do we wait this long? To do it now. Just pause it, do the analysis. I mean, the city of Los Angeles is doing this with all the plants that it wants to repower. It's hired independent companies to do an analysis. Oxnard, the plant that was actually shut down, it was rejected because it was relying on gas and just didn't make sense. They've gone back and they're looking for an alternative method of doing it. So that's what I'm proposing. I'm saying let's put up push the pause button, look at only the alternatives, and then we can pick up from there.
And I would just, that action, that would have to take place at a subsequent meeting.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm saying,
You're asking, I always took your request to agendize a discussion of basically suspending the approach on Grayson.
Oh, I assume that's what has to happen.
Yes.
It has to be agendized.
It would.
Yeah.
The question is, what's agendized and when?
Next year? Obviously.
Well, obviously, but are we doing it in January? Are we doing it in February?
Yeah, I mean,
February is
as soon as possible, obviously. My choice is first meeting of the year.
Also February is fine.
And again, maybe at that first meeting of the year, as Mr. Zern has explained, we could provide information as it relates to what Mr. Sinanian's asking, as well as provide some information to date in terms of what we have done and the alternatives that have already been looked at to see where council may possibly want to go. So we might be able to answer 2 questions possibly at that meeting and continue to keep the March 6th date, I would say, as it relates to the EIR piece, to come back to council unless we get different direction at the council meeting in January.
And as Mr. Najarian requested, I can bring that report back at that time, at least the preliminary report, and you can have that additional information. Because I think, Mr. Sinanian, that the alternatives are there. You are doing the EIR based on the repower of Grayson, but you have to look at all the alternatives, and it's very easy for you as a council to tell us to look at one more closely than another one, if that's your desire. I can go into some detail about that. Some of these other studies that people are talking about, I know in Ventura and LA, the biggest issue there is they're using seawater to cool their electrical facilities, and that's against the law. So they have to very quickly figure out how they're going to cool their equipment.
I think we're going a little bit too far on this item because this is not agendized. There was a motion to agendize this item to come back to the council and make a decision on it. Meanwhile, is it a date certain? Can we do it in late January? Because the first meeting, I think it will be a little bit difficult because we have a lot of items that is already being scheduled on, but maybe second meeting of the January.
If that's the 23rd?
That would 23rd. That would give you some time to put all the other information that Councilmember Najarian indicated together and bring a comprehensive report as to the alternatives besides, the idea of repowering Grayson, have an alternative as to, let's say we shut down Grayson tomorrow, what are we going to do? That alternative, I think that's what you're asking for. An alternative that is not
certainly
set towards.
Not suggesting that we shut down Grayson tomorrow.
No, what I'm saying is you're asking for an alternative that has nothing to do with repowering Grayson.
I want the alternatives or the entire universe of options to be looked at independently of repowering Grayson. In that version, repowering Grayson will be one of the alternatives, as opposed to repowering Grayson being the choice and then the alternatives being the ancillaries.
Alternatives in conjunction with powering Grayson partially.
Repowering Grayson is an alternative.
Yeah.
And I think there's been a lot of focus on Grayson, so obviously we've done a tremendous amount of work on building our renewable portfolio. So maybe I need to do a better job of bringing that information to you so you can see what's been done, what's been planned for the future. And I'll integrate that in there as well.
I mean, one last comment from Councilmember Devine, and this is going to be scheduled for the 23rd, right? Okay.
I think one of the concerns of Councilmember Sinanian was the greenhouse gas emissions, so be sure to include as much information in there as
and we'll have the
mine too,
data from AQMD by that particular time, so that'll be very pertinent to air quality issues. We don't set those, the AQMD does.
Okay. Any more questions from Mr. Zern? No? Any more comments? I have 3 speakers cards. The first one is Michelle, John, William, and Eugene. Followed by Goithia Molina. Go ahead.
Good evening and happy holidays, Mr. Mayor and Council Member. My name is Michelle Jung, and I'm here with my colleagues on behalf of the Global Initiative Alliance. Before we begin, I wanted to thank the Glendale City Council for always being gracious in supporting our continued efforts. The Global Initiative Alliance, or GIA, is a social advocacy group made up of passionate high school students from various cities throughout Southern California who felt that it was about time that the youth got engaged in surrounding social issues. Every year, GIA focuses on one particular social issue and dedicates time and effort into raising awareness and initiating impactful community events, and if necessary, raising impactful funds for the targeted problem. As of this year, our main focus has been a holistic focus on relief and restoration, more specifically the environment and animal rights, natural disasters, and a step towards socioeconomic relief. Particularly in light of the many recent events around the world, GIA members felt that addressing these problems and their victims were of chief importance. We feel deeply that the civic responsibility transcends age, race, status, and gender. The start of real change must begin with the individual.
This holiday, we have begun focusing on the environmental and animal rights campaign. One outlet that we believe we can make immense change is through the combating the abuse of farming for palm oil. Around Christmas time, it's so easy to get caught up in the festivities and general gift-giving vibes that we often forget about the many other groups that desperately need our help. While we may be enjoying the Christmas songs on replay, orangutans in Indonesia are dying by the hundreds, motivated by the cheap prospects and accessibility of palm oil. Thousands of acres of Indonesian forests are being cut down, destroying orangutans' immediate habitats as we continue to perpetuate their endangerment. While the benefits of palm oil are plain to see as it's used in most everyday products, hundreds of orangutans are being forcibly removed from their homes, while many animals that live in the forest fall victim to habit loss. Though, we have specifically targeted orangutans as they have been most immediately affected. Fortunately, we can easily pinpoint their lead perpetrator, palm oil.
So rather than jumping to embark on a grand expedition to completely stop the worldwide use of palm oil and not follow through, we have chosen to carry out more local methods of assistance that can provide small but significant impacts on our fight for orangutans. In a small step towards our ultimate goal, we learned that one of the most commonly used household items, soap, is a product utilizing palm oil. Thus, we have found various methods of creating palm oil-free soap that is equally effective and have worked together to create palm oil-free holiday soap for the community to show how accessible and realistic the process can be. We prepared samples of the soap and informational flyers for you, for the council. And the soap is 100% homemade and palm oil-free.
The palm oil. Okay.
Go ahead, go ahead.
The palm oil-free holiday soap is more so to illustrate the realistic possibilities of utilizing palm oil-free products. We have come together to raise funds to support the Orangutan Foundation International, or the OFI. Through our research process, we discovered that the conservation methods used by the OFI are one of the most ethical and effective movements to save the orangutans. Thus, through in-person donations and our GoFundMe campaign, 100% of the funds raised will be used by the OFI to prevent further damage to the orangutan population by buying the forest lands and limiting deforestation to conserve the natural habitats. Thus, this holiday, and as we head into 2018, we ask that the leaders and community join us in supporting ethical practices of palm oil production to save our environment and the endangered orangutans through word of mouth and support in raising funds through our GoFundMe page to provide relief and restoration to the environment and endangered species. Thank you and happy holidays.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Next speaker. Malina.
Good evening. Mr. Najarian, you're still looking great. You were on the council when I first came here, and I haven't been here in a long time.
You're looking good,
I
too.
wish I looked as good. People don't recognize me, but you look very good. And good evening to the rest of you.
We don't look good? I mean, it's just...
I don't know you. I'm trying to learn your names.
I'm just kidding.
And I'm going to, and your faces and your names, I'm working on it. I address you this evening, and perhaps the previous speakers for Carrot, and you certainly did, Councilman Zanellian, to express strong opposition to the Grayson repowering plant, which I understand is to be powered by natural gas. More than 15 years ago, I stood here asking the council to discontinue allowing rampant development in this crown jewel city. Councilman Dave Weaver, now retired, responded that some sections of Glendale were already the most densely populated in the United States. Having visited my daughter in Manhattan, New York City, I still find that hard to imagine, but perhaps he was right. Yet the construction accelerates with concrete dust, fumes from power equipment, and the dry dirt from excavations blowing into our eyes, noses, and mouths. More people, more cars, more dirty air, far less open space, less parking, less patience, more heavy breathing. The air in Glendale becomes harder to breathe every day. It is dirty. In mid-October, temperatures soared to 100 degrees, mid-October. Tough to breathe. Forecasters tell us to expect more. We have entered the third week of wildfires with effects of the smoke in Santa Barbara still hanging around us. I know. My eyes and my lungs feel it. I have severe COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. My son has asthma. His 4-year-old suffers from frequent respiratory infections. Glendale does not need a $500 million gas-powered plant that will spew more pollutants into our environment. I asked the city to explore, and you are, as of this evening, or perhaps you already were, the potential of renewable energy alternatives to a gas-fired plant. Surely an independent study by a respected team of clean energy specialists will suggest a healthier and safer plan which would be better for the environment and perhaps more economical too. I thank the members of council who tonight have unofficially asked, or I think it's unofficial, for further study. And this evening on the news, another gas leak in Porter Ranch, Aliso Canyon facility. So respectfully, I made copies for you in case I spoke too quickly. Who's the person who gave? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I thought it was pretty official.
Oh, was it? You take a vote? Well, whatever. Thank you very much.
I meant it to be official.
Next speaker is our state senator, Anthony Portantino. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. It's an honor to be here. I want to congratulate
Councilmember Najarian on his award. I'm sorry I missed the presentation earlier tonight, but Art, I know, ably represented.
Did a fine job,
Me.
Senator.
Don't tell your mother that I missed it. Tell her I was here for it, okay? You know, I've been receiving lots of calls and input on Grayson in my office, both from Glendale residents and also from other political offices asking me if I was going to take a position. I've been asked to speak with the council members individually about it, which I knew would be a Brown Act violation. So I didn't want to do that in a serial way. So I hope you apologize that I came tonight, and it's here obviously to support what Councilmember Najarian suggested as far as alternatives. As you know, there's significant legislation working through the Capitol that would basically put some shackles on plants like this, and I think whether they've passed now or they will pass in the future, and I think that's very important to the conversation, so I wanted to add that Sacramento perspective. The state is serious about its green policy, and it's going to affect plants like Grayson. So this letter outlines my comments. You recently adopted the unanimous resolution in support of the United Nations Paris Agreement by joining the Mayor's Council action agenda that was brought up earlier. I think that's significant. I think the deficiencies that we already know in the process and the environmental dangers that are potentially being caused, I think warrant that pause and warrant the city to look at alternatives. So out of respect for the citizens that have been contacting me and the other politicians that have been asking me to wade in, I thought it appropriate to come tonight and share my perspective and do it publicly and openly and in writing. So with that, thank you for letting me do that, and you all have my comments. And have a great holiday.
I have a question.
Yes,
Councilmember Najarian.
A little bit earlier, you were not here. I asked the question from Assemblymember Friedman. You know, Glendale gets, for each dollar property tax we pay, we are getting 13.78 cents. It returns to us. And Burbank, Pasadena, they get 17 and 21 cents per dollar. And
some cities get 7.
Yes, but Los Angeles gets 25 cents. So I understand Los Angeles, they have more senators representing them. But is that something that you can consider to discuss it, to make it fair? With all this,
I think it's something that's discussed all the time from the cities. I believe La Cañada got 7 cents on the dollar, and it was something, and the county takes a penny to process it, so they net out 6. You know, it's something we all talk about constantly. School districts, it's the same thing. Different school districts get different average daily attendance. Some of it goes back to lawsuits and agreements back in the 60s. So there's ongoing efforts to try to get more dollars on the local level. Obviously, the way SB 1 was crafted, it was crafted particularly to give more dollars to the local cities, to the local transportation agencies. So every effort to try to get more dollars locally to the cities I represent, I'm going to continue to support. So I can't promise you you're going to get what you want, but I can tell you that we all argue as much as we can for that.
Okay, thank you.
Just want to just make a comment about upcoming legislations, and every time there is a new legislation that municipalities are asked, or the region is asked to do more, like the Air Resources Board came up with a new idea to go another, reduce the greenhouse gas emission by 30%. On a SCAG level, we've been discussing this issue that we cannot do more than 18 or 19%. And we passed our 2020 levels 2 years ago. We did more, and that's why somewhat Southern California is being penalized, because we were supposed to reduce the greenhouse gas emission by 13%. We went up to 19%. And now, whatever that last limit was, Air Resources Board put maybe 8 to 10% on top of that and said, that's your next target. Northern California, with all the environmentalists they had, they didn't even meet their benchmark. And now they don't have the burden that we have, because they're adding 5% to 12%, and they have to come up with 17%. So we said we want to, every one of us here on this dais is concerned about our environment, concerned about the future of our children. I want to live this planet Earth much better than we found it. But we need resources. If the Sacramento or Washington puts all the pressure on local municipalities without any resources, I don't think that is fair. So these two go hand to hand. I mean, the legislation.
Unfunded mandates are never are
And
never
that's what it
appreciated.
is right now with Air Resources Board. And we told them, look, we do everything we can, but with resources that we have, we can do 19%. And it's really tight, but we're going to work hard. Glendale met the 2020 level that we had to meet last year. So we've done our share, even in Glendale, also in Southern California and SCAG level. But my humble request is to look into the funding and resources as well, so we can achieve the goals that we set today for next 50 or 100 years.
Absolutely. If Mr. Mayor, if you would indulge me for 30 seconds more, one of the reasons why I'm here tonight is because I know the environmental legislation is going to pass in Sacramento, and I want to make sure that Glendale is well positioned with its policy on energy, with looking at Grayson, not just in the here and now, but how it would be affected by future legislation next year or the year after.
We appreciate
so that's why I'm here. And I tell you the story about the Los Angeles County Sanitation District. One of the reasons why Los Angeles County Sanitation District has the lowest rates in the country is because when they were drafting the Clean Water Act in Washington, they were there before it was passed. And they were ahead of the curve planning for those changes in environmental policy before they were mandated. So that's why it's important to this conversation, and that's why I support Councilmember Sinanian's effort and the others who talked about bringing alternatives that are consistent with these policies that not are just today, but what are going to come in the next year. So I'll continue to fight for the resources, and as you know, oftentimes I break with my colleagues on some of the unfunded mandates. SB 35 took away your local control and is making you do some things.
I can go on and on from
I know, there's a ton of them, and I used to sit
legislations
in a
that we
chair
fought
just like
for
you.
With our constituents to pass the gas tax and pass the Measure H and pass the cap and trade and support everything else, and we're getting the short end of the stick. So we need resources in order to comply with what our representatives want in Sacramento. And I want to thank you for being here.
No, thank you for letting me have extra time. I appreciate it, and all of you have a great New Year.
Thank you. What is next, please?
Mr. Mayor and Council, there are no cards, I believe, for any, we've exhausted the general public comment for a 3-minute. So
Exhausted is the right word, Mr. Kasakian.
Under action items, 8A is Director of Public Works regarding Glendale Narrows Riverwalk Phase 2 and Bikeway Culvert Project. 8A1 is motion to approve contract change order number 2 in the amount of $307,565.63 for contract with Powell Constructions, Inc., and to increase the contingency to $215,199.06. 2 is resolution appropriating $369,898.19 from the local grants.
Okay, Mr. Golanian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, City Council, as it was noted, this is related to the Glendale Narrows Riverwalk project. The Phase 1, construction of Phase 1 was completed in 2012. And the subject of this item in front of you is Phase 2, that includes the construction of 2 small parks, the remainder of the trail along Riverwalk, as well as a crossing over a flood-controlled drain culvert, which would connect the 2 segments of the trail. And once done, once finished, it will complete a 1-mile stretch of the trail along Riverwalk, all within the City of Glendale boundaries. So back in July of 2015, City Council approved an award to Powell Constructors for the construction of Phase 2 in the amount of $1,844,000 plus a contingency, 10% contingency. And all of this are fully funded with Measure R, Prop 84, Parks Development Impact Fees, and gas tax. Because of the work that's involved within the flood control channel, we applied for a permit through Army Corps of Engineers and the LA County Public Works Department. Unfortunately, they took 2.5 years to issue the 2 permits, but in the meantime, they also required additional structural work within and adjacent to the channel. So we went back to the contractor and requested a cost proposal. We negotiated a change order with them in the amount of $307,565. We have added another 10% contingency to that change order. We also checked with Metro staff, and they have confirmed that this additional cost is eligible for Measure R regional return funds. All we have to do is amend the funding agreement that's already in place. Once council approves this change order, Metro staff will take an item to Metro Board at their next meeting in April 2018 to amend the funding agreement and reimburse the cost of this change order. The contractors already started phase 2 on November 7th. We anticipate that the entire work will be completed by October of next year. So we are requesting your approval and appropriation of $369,898, which also includes some additional project management costs.
Questions?
I'll move the item.
Second. Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Najarian,
Yes.
Devine,
Yes.
Najarian,
Yes.
Sinanian,
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is Director of Community Development regarding proposed business terms for a potential ground lease agreement with R3 Real Estate Developers, LLC, R3, of parking lot number 3 for development of Hotel Indigo. B1 is a motion authorizing to complete lease negotiations based on business terms described and as directed by City Council, and further directing staff to return to the City Council for consideration of a lease after negotiations are complete.
Ms. Sanchez?
Good evening, Mayor Garpetian and council members. As part of the economic development goals for the city, the recruitment of a high-quality boutique hotel to our downtown, and in particular Arts and Entertainment District, has been part of a strategy as we build upon our 18-hour-day city. So in addition to being able to add this amenity to what is a very vibrant downtown, this revenue generation that's created by the TOT allows us to better maximize the city asset. So with this in mind, in December of 2015 is when, with the goal to explore the feasibility of building a Hotel Indigo on an existing parking lot, also with the requirement to keep the 66 public parking spaces, the Glendale City Council approved an ENA with R3 for the development of a Hotel Indigo. So since that time, the city staff has worked in good faith to develop a set of terms that would serve these purposes. This has been done through a very thorough investigation of various development scenarios. The brand, the quality, and the inclusion of the public parking has been at the forefront of our negotiations. So on page 2 and 3 of your council report, that does summarize a very robust proposed ground lease agreement. That agreement, along with a number of other transactional documents, will be brought to you at a later date. Tonight, you are not being asked to approve any of these terms, nor are you asked to approve any of the discretionary actions. We are still in the negotiating phase with the development team. However, tonight we are seeking your direction on parking alternatives. So with that, though, excuse me, do we have
Look at it as you normally would.
doesn't There we go. Okay, so like I said, this is a summary of the ground lease terms. It is a 55-year initial term with 4 10-year extensions. The ground rent is also structured in a manner that allows for rent stabilization. Because of the inclusion of the public parking, we felt that this warranted a consideration for this type of rent structure. Rent would be abated for 2 years of construction and 3 years of operation. After that, rent would presume at $50,000 a year, or we'd share in a percentage of the revenue generated from the rooms. Another term is on the hotel quality. We are asking for a 3-diamond level. This allows for high quality, but again, a limited service brand. This is done with the intention of making sure that people that are visiting the Hotel Indigo continue to explore our downtown, frequent our restaurants in downtown. Because of our participation, there is prevailing wages and would be required of the development team. There will be a request to purchase provision. So at 5-year increments, the developer could request an option to purchase the site. A special provision, and something we're very proud of, is the jobs program that would be part of this ground lease. This would give Glendale residents a priority for jobs at this site. And then the last two, although not so much, especially with FAR, it's not so much a business term, but really something you will have some discretion in the future on. The property does have a public alley that would be vacated and then reestablished at a later time. Again, we just want to call your attention to that. And then, like I said, the parking. So we will have the development team's architect present the 3 different parking alternatives. But just so you get a bigger picture of some of the parameters that are already established, the public parking is not being discussed tonight. That is already included in these different scenarios. There are 66 public parking spaces that will be brought back onto this property, and they'll all be at the first subterranean level. Now, once you go below that at the second subterranean level, that's what we are going to be discussing and what we need your direction on tonight. The hotel parking will be separate from the public parking, so you would not have that access. And then we'll have the architect come and talk a little bit about that. So really, after tonight, we have a number, we're going to bring to you everything together. So you're going to get the CEQA document, you'll get the final ground lease agreement, as well as a parking maintenance and operation agreement. You'll get the combined stage 1 and 2 design review for the hotel. And like I said earlier, the FAR variance and parking exception will also be brought to you. So I will introduce Aram Najarian. He is going to, like I said, walk you through the 3 separate parking alternatives, but then I'll be available to answer any questions you may have about the proposed terms and how that might impact your business terms.
Okay.
Okay, and this has all of them loaded if you want, unless that's different.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Aram Najarian. I'm the project architect for the proposed Indigo Hotel. Just talking about the parking, let me say first that, we really do appreciate the staff's input on the project. It's been a long way. Finally, we're here, to present you with a couple of alternatives and concepts. We have started this project in 2016. We've gone through a lot of changes, and finally, we arrived to 3 alternatives on how we're going to park, especially for the hotel. Now we are replacing the. Let me help over here to. No, that's not the one. I'm sorry.
So, Judge, how much time do you need? So I can ask
I need
them.
about 3 minutes.
Oh.
And then we have.
And after you finish, please fill out the speaker's card.
I did already.
Oh, you
So
did? Thank you. Because I didn't give it.
And to add to that, we have Mr. John Bagdanian, who's our traffic consultant, is here. Would like to share some opinion about the parking, hotel parking, and also developer Mr. Raj Patel is here. He would have probably a minute or 2 to speak to you.
No worries, no worries. You have enough time. You get as
Now
much
the
time as
Hotel
you
Indigo will have. Should I go from here? Yeah, this is the site plan that's showing the arrival, the porte-cochere area, and it's showing if I move the mouse, you can see this here, where a drop-off area for the hotel, some parking in the back, and then we're using this driveway or alley to get in from the back, and we ramp down to the lower parking spaces. So as Darlene has indicated, the first level will completely be used for the public parking with a separate elevator that you have an access just from this elevator. Public will have an access to the street side, and it accommodates that. Now, our first alternative will have total of, in the lower level, we'll have 110 parking spaces. Now, for the 66 parking upstairs, for including the street level parking that we're providing, 110 parking spaces is basically 0.82 if you divide were 140 rooms that we're proposing for the hotel. Now, we are in a DSP TD zone, which is at the skirts of being in a DSP zone, and if you consider most of the hotels that are, they're parked at the 0.8, and we had a chance yesterday to visit a couple of hotels with Mayor Garabedian and Councilmember Agajanian, and Darlene was there. we have witnessed that the hotel in North Hollywood that belongs to Mr. Patel here was built a few years ago, and was built in a 0.5 ratio, and was a peak hour, and was half empty, the parking structure, which is the lower level. And also we visited the Indigo, which is normally they do park like it's a valet park. The Indigo program is mainly is valid. You know, this is what the hotel wants for their guests. Now, talking about that, you know, we have 110 parking spaces would be 0.82 parking for the alternative one. Now, alternative two, what we're proposing, it would be similar setting for the first subterranean level and the street level. So we're accommodating that 66 parking spaces for the public, and plus we have additional parking for a drop-off and registration. Now the lower level parking would accommodate parking spaces for the hotel guests, which will total, just one second, it will total 78 parking spaces. And with the alternative two, we're proposing that we enter into a parking agreement, which my client developer has already spoken to property owners across the street and the church. And there is a understanding that we may be able to, you know, proceed with a 55 parking spaces leasing from the church for additional parking over and above the 78 that would be strictly parked from the hotel. And still you're going to require an attendant to move this parking additional 55 whenever it requires to the additional parking spaces at the church site. Now the third alternative, which sort of severely increases the cost. Again, the first level and the street level is the same. We're adding additional level of parking, which will bring us, we will technically be over-parked, which will be 3 levels of parking. That is going to really add the cost, and what we're asking here, if we can get 2 years of a TOT tax waived, it's like some cities doing. Recently, I sent an article to city staff about LA City that waiving the TOT tax for certain years for the hotel that is coming in downtown. Similar practices doing other cities that we work with, you know, waiving a couple of years or increments of the TOT taxes being waived. But let me say that our preferred alternative would be alternative number 1, which is to be used attendant parking or valet parking completely with a hotel and within the hotel. I'm going to ask Mr. John Bagdanian to come up here and take it from here.
Can I just ask one question of him?
Yes.
In alternative number 1, you have parking in the aisles, correct?
Yes.
And how would we be
let me
moving?
go back to.
How would we be moving cars and like the lower level or the lower edge there on the bottom of
This
the
area?
drawing?
Right.
On the right. On
Okay.
the right. Now, if you have them all parked along, how do you move the car that's at the far end? How do you get that car out of there?
Okay. The people who valet park this, they're very much familiar with this. We check with the valet company, the layout, and it's technically works. We have left this 8 to 9 feet of an open space for driving through. Basically what they do, there's a backup area or loading area here. They move the car and then bring this one, and they ramp up from here out.
Do they drive it out backwards? Do they back it out?
I'm sorry?
Do they back it out of that space or?
There's
no turnaround.
This is basically done by professionals. They park. No, the attendants will park here. No guests will be bringing the car down to park in tandem. So it's all being taken care of by the staff, and they will be parking this way to accommodate all of these parking spaces. And we do have a drive aisle, which is, yes, it is narrower. It's like 9 feet, but it's used in many valet spaces, you know, around the town too, in the parking lots. If you go out the night, you see valets parking, and they use the similar type of layout over there. And the parking stalls are 9 by 20 to give them a little bit of a more room to move around, you know. So that's the size of each parking stall being used here. questions, or should I ask Mr. Baghdadi to read?
I have a question.
Councilmember Sinani.
Yes, so the downtown Indigo was parked at what ratio?
Well, downtown Indigo was 365 rooms, if I'm not mistaken, and was parked 150 cars. That's less than 0.5.
Okay.
Isn't that what you heard? Yeah.
345 and 100.
So they're all valet parks. So Indigo itself, as a brand, as a hotel, they valet park for their all guests and clients. That's how the operation of the hotel works.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Baghdadi.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, John Baghdinian, JB Associates. The project developer has asked me to give you an overview of today's parking standards or guidelines that are being used, especially as it relates to hotel. In the last 3 to 4 years, there's been a lot of development on smaller size hotels between 120 to 160 rooms. Most of these hotels are being built in lots that are smaller. So in order to get a footprint and put in a parking structure underneath these hotels, it's somewhat more difficult. So all the architects and developers, traffic engineers are looking into see what are the ways to reduce the number of parking spaces that are required. With the handout that I provided to you, basically gives you some guidelines of what the industry standards are today. Institute of Transportation Engineers Parking Generation Manual requires a ratio of 0.6 parking spaces per room for hotels. So if you apply a 140-room hotel with a ratio of 0.6, that would be recommended a number of 84 parking spaces for a hotel of this size. Urban Land Institute also has guidelines for shared parking, and they have a manual that is being used for determining hotel parking ratios. And the Urban Land Institute has a ratio of 0.8 for weekday parking, a ratio of 0.8 for weekday parking and 0.7 on weekends. Usually, during the week, the parking demand for hotels is higher than on weekends. So if you apply that, you have a number of 112 spaces for a weekdays parking and 98 for weekends. City of Burbank, just about 2 years ago, they built the Hilton Garden Hotel in Burbank. It's currently operational, and they use a 0.86. I mean, it was a 0.82, and then by the time they've completed the project, it has a ratio of 0.86. So if you, again, apply a ratio of 0.86, you get about 120 spaces required for a hotel. And City of Glendale's parking requirement is 1-to-1 ratio, 1 space per room. Most of these types of older codes, I want to call it older codes, is because most of these hotels are for suburban areas where you have a lot of land, you have parking lots, you don't have a parking need for building a parking structure, subterranean structure. So a ratio 1-to-1 is more appropriate. Based on Mr. Najarian analysis, if you applied, for example, what's being recommended in Alternative 1, it's a 0.82, so you will have about 112 parking requirement, which is somewhat comparable between the ratios that are being recommended by ITE or Urban Land Institute. But I think what's more important to look at, which is the second, roll it down. Okay. The second chart I handed out, this one is more based on hotel occupancy. As you can see, every hotel is trying to strive for at least an 85% occupancy level. In other words, you're trying to make it more efficient, more profitable at 85% occupancy. So just building one room, one parking space per room, that necessarily results in all of those spaces are occupied. So another way of looking at it is if you look at what I provided to you with a 140-room hotel, if you're at 90%, you'll need at 90% occupancy, that means 126 rooms are occupied. At 85%, which is what typically hotels are striving for, is about 119. So if you apply, for example, the ratio that is being recommended under Alternative 1, you'll need 95 parking spaces, which is below this 112 that they can provide through a combination of parking spaces, tandem spaces, and valet spaces for this project. And then if you go to alternative 2, which is at 0.6 ratio, applied at the 85% room occupancy, you need 71 parking spaces. Personally, I don't recommend it at that lower ratio, but I think somewhere between 0.75, 0.8 at an 85% room occupancy is a good guideline to apply, not only on this hotel or any other future projects that might be necessary in the city of Glendale. I think another big factor that I am experiencing is that at the airports, for example, because of the transportation network companies, Uber and Lyft, give you an example, LAX has 320,000 pickups and drop-off at LAX by Uber and Lyft. Burbank Airport has 45,000 pickups and drop-offs by Lyft. So all of these are business travelers. They're obviously tourists also. And they have found out that it's cheaper not to rent a car. If you arrive to an airport and you can get a $30 ride from LAX to downtown, it's only cost you $30. If you stayed in a hotel and you pay $45 a night for parking, if you rented a car plus the rent of the car, it is expensive. So as you will find that in many of these hotels, the parking demand is not as high as it used to be prior to 2012, where there was 1-to-1 ratios or 0.8-to-1 ratios. So that is just to give you an overview of what I think that somewhere between 0.75, 0.8 is a good ratio to consider when you're looking at some type of a hotel project of this magnitude, of this size, somewhere between 140 to 160 rooms. I'll be happy to answer any more questions.
Any questions from?
I have a question. So, Mr. Bagdanian, the difference between Plan 1 and Plan 2 is only the way in which the cars are parked on that second level. Is that correct?
Yeah, in Plan 2, they're planning to have...
they're stacked and they're...
Yeah, they're still doing that, but plus they are going to have additional parking off-site, which Mr. Najarian mentioned, about 55
so there's off-site.
spaces.
So that's Plan 2.
That's Plan 2.
So it puts less cars on the second floor.
Right.
And leaves off-site parking available.
Yeah.
But the difference between Plan 1 and Plan 2 in terms of that second floor is that there's more cars parked, stacked, double parked, et cetera, on Plan number 1.
That's correct.
On the ramps, we saw the diagram. Can you give an opinion as to whether the way that alternative 1 is configured, whether that is a feasible valet parking configuration? In other words, are they going to be able to move the cars around in that manner? If you have that, I know you're a transportation planner, I know you're an engineer. We hold engineers in high regard on this council for many years. I mean, is it doable? Is Plan 1 doable with those? I mean, it looks tight for me. I would, as a personal, on my own, I would have some trepidations about trying to park or pull a car out. But you're talking about experts, and these guys have some experience, I presume, in doing that. Is that something that's workable?
Councilmember Najarian, just to qualify what I'm going to tell you, if this can only work if you have a professional valet company doing it. In other words, hotel attendants that are very familiar, and if you've been, I'm sure you've been to many downtown, old buildings in downtown, where you have very sharp, corkscrew type ramps when you get down, and you use every inch to park a car. And there are worse scenarios where parking is done in old buildings where there's columns, and it's very, very hard to make. But valet operators are able to do that. It's not ideal. I will have to qualify. It's not ideal. But if you have a professional valet or attendants that are able to do this, and it's only done by them, not like residents or, the hotel guests by no means should not be allowed because there'll be a liability technically. So they will park the vehicles in a way so that you park some vehicles in one direction, park other vehicles in another direction until it reaches capacity. And then you start, moving them back and forth. Sometimes it's like a musical chair. You may have to move a couple of vehicles to pull one vehicle, which is at the end of the aisle, and then move them back in.
I mean, I've been to those places. The first question is, how long are you staying?
Yes.
Right? So if it's an hour, I presume they put it in a different location. If it's, I'm going to be here overnight, or whatever, they're getting that extra information from the guest as to where to place the vehicle to make their job easier.
Usually, and then you have tandem spaces where the employee parkings occur. They will put their tandems, where they know in each shift how many employees are working which shift, so they will be parking in the most remote, most locations that it's more difficult to get to. So is it manageable? Yes, as long as it's done by professional staff of the hotel. And that's what the Indigo Hotel is committing, to have a valet. Valet means their attendants are going to be doing this work.
Okay. Questions? I have a couple of questions for you. The new Hilton, you said it was built in Burbank?
Yes, Glendale, Hilton Garden.
How many rooms?
Hilton Garden, I have it in my notes, I believe it's 160.
How many parking spaces?
120 spaces.
And is it parked the way that you're showing on this second floor of valet parking?
No, they have a straight parking as you enter.
I think that's the difference. I mean, we all know that many people use Uber and Lyft and alternative transportations to go to hotels from airports. And we talked about this, that some of the rental companies, car rental companies in airports, the smaller ones, they shut down because nobody's renting cars from them. There are a lot of people who drive still to hotels. There are a lot of people who rent cars because they need a car the next day. But with all due respect, this valet plan, I don't think anybody in the world can make this happen, because you have, not you, the way this is drawn, you have cars parked on the ramp that comes down to the basement floor, or the second floor, that it indicates 6 cars that's parked on the ramp. And with all these, and if the drive aisles are 24 feet wide and your cars are, the parking spaces are 9 by 20, you can't touch the car. So you have a little bit of space between them, a foot between the 2 cars and the cars that are parked perpendicular. So you have 10 and 10, 20 feet. You park 2 cars, there's only 4 foot left, 4 foot drive aisle left. You can't squeeze a car through. I just want to ask you again, that do you think this is doable? Because if I want to pull this car from this very end corner, you have to move all of them out on the street in order to get this one out. So this is just an opinion. I'm telling you the way I look at this thing. Even you show cars that are parked on the ramp, that I don't think this will be.
I think you're misreading the plan. The ramp that brings down works for the valet, there's no parking on it. The location that is shown, the tandemly parked, it's under the ramp.
It's not tandem parking. But anyways, I mean.
Yeah, it is this, the ramp is clear to go down. The ramp is clear.
Go to the second floor.
Okay.
Okay.
So this is under the ramp. Ramp happens up above. So when you circulate down in a 3%, you get the clearance to park under the ramp. This is happening just in a very basement. So the ramp would be this one here. So the ramp that you're going down, it will be clear all the way down to this level. It's 0 out here. This is happening.
This is under the ramp, so it's a structure.
Yes.
Okay.
When you ramp it down, you have a room underneath.
But
now the opening that we were talking about in alternative 1, the circulation here, this between the parking stall and between the parallel parking over here is about 8 to 9 feet of a room, which is plenty enough for maneuvering or having a car to come by, because car itself is about 6.5 feet. That would definitely, make room. But this is handled everything by valet. Even if we don't have all of this tandem up here, this is in case you get to go to the maximum parking spaces. But we do believe with the valet parking, even with the occupancy that we rate of 80-85%, you're just going to be filling up all of this here, because people normally they use Uber and taxis and other means of transportation to get to the hotel.
Okay. What I have here, it says, again, I appreciate your answer. What I have here, it says 24 feet is the drive aisle, and as you indicated, the parking space is 9 by 20, and the cars cannot touch each other, so there you need a little bit. 8 by 20 or 9 by 20? Okay. Okay, thank you. So the parking spaces that are 0.8 in Burbank, they are straight parking. They're not like.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Any more questions from?
I just, I have later have more questions, but at this time, I think we have to pass on alternative one. That's not doable, that's hard. Let's go to alternative 2 and 3.
Mr. Aljan, I still have speakers' cards before we deliberate, sorry. Next speaker is Mr. Patel, Raj Patel, and Eric Altoon.
Good evening, City Council. Yeah, I have a letter from the Vice President, Hotel Indigo, where we've submitted the application. So if I can submit that. So I would like to thank the Economic Development staff. So we've been working for over 2 years to get to this point, to get the Indigo brand into Glendale. And it is a lifestyle brand. They're moving towards a valet-only alternative for their larger hotels that are over 100 units. And for Councilmember Devine's question about how they do the valet parking, they first initially the valet would park in all the different stalls, and then they would have only one ring. The cars would have one ring around all the stalls, and then if they start filling up, then they start the second ring with some spaces in between. This one would be under a rare occurrence if, every single person would, that many spaces would bring a car, which we don't think would occur, that often. And we'd like to answer any questions about the Indigo or Indigo brand if there are any questions.
Okay. Any questions?
Well, I don't know that this is about the brand, but, I'm thinking about the parking, and you're saying that this will happen on rare occasions, et cetera.
Yes.
You have 3 meeting rooms up on the top.
Yes.
On the second level.
Yeah.
And are those for special meetings, events?
Yes, so the meetings are like for breakout sessions. We have the business travelers coming to the hotel, and they each, they're meeting different groups or the different companies. They would require a meeting area. Most of the time, they would occur in the daytime. We'd have certain community groups who need a meeting area, and they ask the hotel. All those would be in the daytime when there's less parking requirement needed.
Well, I was going to say, do you think that would increase the need for parking, for more parking spaces, or?
Not more than this, because they're already guests at the hotel. And in the daytime, if they're from the community or we get a request from maybe the neighbors or somebody that they would like to meet, it would be doing off hours when the hotel has plenty of parking. This is usually in the evening after 10 p.m.
After 10 p.m. for the use of the room?
No, not 10 p.m. for use of the room. 10 p.m. when you have a maximum parking requirement needed, maybe on a Friday and Saturday.
All right. And this letter that you received is dated December 19th. It says non-binding letter. What does that mean?
But a non-binding means that, we don't have the site under our control yet. We don't have the site under our control. So Indigo doesn't show that it's, that they are committed to this, a site that the city is also non-binding on there. They haven't given either, it's not under our name or the lease is not signed yet for this project. But they are meeting on the 8th of January to approve the site, and we're hoping that in January the city can approve this project as well.
Can you tell me a little bit about the process as to how do you obtain approval from an IHG for any project, not
Correct.
just this one.
So, yeah,
So how
so
does that
this
work?
is one of the larger projects for IHG. They are a very limited brand. It's one of their flagship brands, the Hotel Indigo. So they don't allow any developer to just come in and they just give them the brand. It has to be, there's several questions that they ask as the developer. Do you currently own hotels under IHG, which we do? They worry about financing, do you have enough capital to do this project? What is the quality of the developer? And are they in the IHG family? They will do more development with them, which we, meet all the marks that they require. And we have a management company as well that we use, the Intermountain Management, which they've already approved to manage this hotel.
Okay, my understanding was that this process was done already because I was told that you're the preferred developer of the IHG for Hotel Indigo in Glendale, and we thought that this site is already approved for it.
The site is verbally approved, but as you know, with the legal requirements, when they sign off, that is usually a final step when there is more definite site control that is going to be given to the developer.
Definite site. Okay, thank you. Next speaker, Eric. Would you like? You're not speaking?
Eric is on our legal team, only if you have any questions for Eric regarding.
I don't have any questions from the legal. No?
I have a question from Mr. Patel.
Mr. Patel, Councilmember Najarian has some.
Okay, let's assume you are the finalist and you get to do this building and you will construct it. Are you planning to stay and own the building and the hotel, or you're planning to turn it to somebody else after you get?
So we have big plans for this project. We want to be part of Glendale. So I'm glad you asked me. We want to incorporate with the community. For example, I was saying with our meeting rooms, we want to give to the city and also to other community groups, which we already do at our other projects. Indigo is a lifestyle brand, so I apologize about that.
There's a lifestyle.
That's my son. He has a special direct line into.
I think that's our approval over the line. It's coming.
Yeah. Even if it's on silent, it goes right through. I apologize about that, but we want to incorporate Glendale into the hotel, into the lobby. For example, certain Glendale elements, historical elements like City Hall, Casa Adobe, the Brand Library, the Glendale Center Theater, and the Alex Theater. Elements of that will be put into the lobby, will become a spokesman for Glendale, that once guests arrive to the hotel, there is shopping at the Americana and the Galleria. We'll have incorporate elements of the Deukmejian Wilderness Park and its gorgeous views inside to the lobby. So we want to be part of the community. IHG knows as well that we're not in the market to sell this hotel. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm sorry, those are great, but still I want to make sure. So you will develop this hotel,
Correct.
and you'll be the owner of this hotel. Is
Correct.
that you, after you get the contract from the city, you turn around and sell it for
No,
somebody
we're
else
of a
to do?
sufficient size that we're not interested, or that's not part of our company. We hold our hotels, and we actually, as we've done in, for example, City of North Hollywood, we expand our business and expand in the city that we go into.
Thank you.
Thank you.
A follow-up question from Mr. Patel. So, Mr. Patel, I heard some questions being asked, sort of questioning IHG's and Indigo's commitment to, I think, you. And it would be very easy to dispel all this if someone from IHG was actually here.
Well, he was here last week. What happened is he flew in here on Tuesday, and he was going to meet on Tuesday and Thursday with the city staff and also with the council. But unfortunately, the meetings got changed, and Chris Dobbins is the vice president. So I actually, on my own on Tuesday, toured with him in Glendale, and we walked around and walked to these different sites, and he was very impressed. And I said, you know, Chris, I know you can't make it on Tuesday, but can you give us a letter, which he was very happy to. And actually, I was on the phone with him, and even an hour today going over parts of what's in Glendale.
So had the meeting not been continued inexplicably by a week,
yes,
Mr. Dobbins from IHG, from Indigo, would have been here. And
yes,
this wouldn't
and like I
be
said,
an
he was
issue at
already
all.
here last Tuesday,
Right.
and he was also here on Thursday to meet.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you for
He flew in just for this from Phoenix. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Patel. I
Thank
just
you.
want to mention that we went to ICSC in 2015, and we met with IHG because we wanted Indigo in Glendale. And they, even at that time, they showed interest. There is no doubt in our mind, at least in my mind, that IHG wants to be here and Indigo wants to be here. I mean, the question that I asked was about the letter that you just presented, and I asked about the process, not the intention of the corporation or the mother company as to if they want to be in Glendale or not. We do know that they want to be in Glendale.
Glendale's a great city. A lot of hotels want to be in Glendale.
Right.
The letter is just to show that they're interested in our company, in R3 Real Estate, not in the city of Glendale.
Thank you,
A
sir.
lot of
Thank you.
hotels want to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Last card on this item, Mike Mohill.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Mike Mohill. Do we need another hotel in Glendale? We cannot afford to give up parking spaces. In the near future, we will have about 4,000 new apartments in the DSP and the surrounding area. Parking will become more of a premium every day. We should demand the developer to provide more than just replacement parking, because as we know, the developer's guests will end up using public parking if they have to. So the taxpayers are paying for public parking for the hotel. The developer talked about leasing property from next door across the street for parking at the church. You know, that's reminiscent of what happened over there at World Gym a couple years ago, because there was a banquet hall across the street that didn't have enough parking. So they got the approval by saying to the city, hey, World Gym will let us park about 50 cars in their parking lot at night. Well, guess what? World Gym is gone today. And where are their guests parking their cars today? They're parking in residential neighborhoods. Thank you very much, council members, for that decision in the past. In the future, it's a matter of time we're going to have another parking lot because of all the development for hotels. You're going to be asking the taxpayers again to pass a bond to build another parking lot. Is that fair? How much is enough is enough? I know we love to have sales tax and property tax, but you know what? The residents who live here should have first priority, not a developer who wants to put in another hotel. We have plenty of hotels. If he cannot provide more than enough parking for everyone, including his guests, his request should be denied. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohill. Just for the record, the banquet hall that Mr. Mohill mentioned, it's true that they were releasing parking spaces from the Gold's Gym across the street, but before the Gold's Gym was, the parking lot was taken away from them, they already came in and got an approval to build their own parking structure on their own site so their guests can park on their site in their own parking structure. So just want to put that out there. And as far as the hotel rooms go, no one has that magic wand and say we need this many rooms or that many rooms, but if you compare Glendale to Pasadena, which they have 30% less population than we do, Glendale generates less than $6 million in hotel tax, the TOT, transient occupancy tax, versus Pasadena that generates $15 million, over $15 million a year. So there is a need that we're trying to address today. So with that, I have no other cards. my colleagues, if you have any questions from staff or the developer or their architect, there's their legal counsel, we are ready to rock and roll.
In page 3 of the report, it says option to purchase at 5 years and option to purchase at fair market value. That option is to, obviously, to the lessee.
Correct.
So then how the process works? Okay, 3 years later, they say we want to buy the property. What happens next?
So if they were to come as part of that and request to purchase the property, we would do an appraisal, we would go to the council, and the council would have to vote, and there'd be a 4/5 voting requirement to sell that property.
I know, but it's not written here. It's going to be written at a later time?
It's definitely already part of the draft lease agreement and something we've talked to the development team about.
Because when you say option is with the lessee, it means they can bring that option, so we can deny it at the time if there is an, maybe.
Yes. That's the way, because our charter requires that council approval, and we're not proposing that it be part of the transaction at this time. It will have to come back to the council, and the council will have to, by 4/5 vote, approve that sale.
Because most of the times, you know, we are going to have up and downs. The property value gonna go up and down. And generally, those who are better business people, they come and try to buy the property at a time which is, the price is lower. And the city is not in position to sell whatever, I mean, they don't have to sell anything they have. So they have to weigh everything and sell it at a better time. So that's why I want to be part of this contract. If it goes through, to be mentioned this, that, as you explained.
Correct. It'll all be incorporated into that lease.
Okay.
Any more comments, questions?
I just will ask one question from John Bagdanian. So based on your expertise, how many parking this hotel needs?
I think that ratio of 0.8.
0.8?
0.8
That's
is
112 parking.
112 spaces is what is being done in many cities. That's what the range is, about 0.8.
I know, but you are, based on
I
your
would-
analysis, you are recommending to have 112 parking for this hotel.
Yes, 0.8 is, I would recommend a 0.8.
Okay. Thank you.
Questions, comments?
Just one more comment and then I have questions, but I will wait. I think this alternative one should be out of question. This, I remember there was this hotel, I don't want to say for sure, on corner of Central and Wilson, I guess, which is still ongoing. Something like this has been offered there, and people, they came here and complained about it, that they were asking, where is the parking? And they were saying the aisles will be used as a parking. And until when I was running for city council, they were coming to me and asking, are you going to approve a hotel with their parking being the aisle between the cars? So is that right? That hotel has same similar situation as this?
A similar situation as alternative 2. Not parking in the aisles, but they do lease space from us in our Orange Street garage for overflow parking. Similar to the proposal in alternative 2, where they would lease space off-site. So in that hotel project, we parked it at 0.75. We required the developer to pay an in-lieu fee and then, I should say, rent spaces outside for the balance. Similar to what's being proposed in alternative 2.
So you're saying that hotel, they didn't ask to park on between the cars on the aisle?
I don't recall that they were anticipating.
There was a hotel. That's not the hotel, I remember because I was involved with it. So there is a hotel in Glendale that they park. I mean, when they ask, they said, where is the enough parking? And they said they will park on the aisle. So if it's not that, I remember that's the hotel, but if you're saying no, that's fine. But however, alternative 1 to me is not acceptable. I think we have to talk about alternative 2 or alternative 3, but I will wait until others express their opinions.
Would you like to go? Mr. Najarian?
Well, I'm ready to go with alternative 1. I'm not going to micromanage how a valet company places cars in a parking lot that's entirely and exclusively open to their drivers and their employees. Getting, to double guess or second guess how a valet company can do it is not my job. But what I'm hearing from an expert is that it's doable. So why don't we just let them do it? I don't care if they park it 3 in a row on top of each other, flip them on the side. As long as the car can get out, that's good enough, and that provides the most parking. So I would move approval of the business deals with number 1.
Okay. You want me to go next?
Yes.
Okay. So, I don't know how many times it can be repeated as to what's happening with the whole parking issue in general in Southern California. I sit on the board of our Hollywood Burbank airport, and we are witnessing, I think John Bagdanian alluded to this, it's happening at Hollywood Burbank Airport. You see the parking levels dropping, so folks aren't using the parking lots anymore. And you see a corresponding rise in the TNCs, the use of Uber and Lyft, and bottom line being folks at the airport when they head off, whether they're going home or going to the hotel, just aren't using cars. They're not renting cars, and they're not parking anything. They use these services that are now available. And that's a trend, and I think it's an undeniable trend. There's no question about it. Some hotels, for example, extended stay hotels, where folks go there and they may stay there for a month or so, obviously are different in their nature because they do require, they're more likely to require having an automobile to get around because folks are going to be there for a long period of time. But otherwise, it's not what it used to be 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. For me personally, alternative 3 is not attractive because I don't want to give up on a TOT. This is what we get out of this deal. The city gets the TOT. Alternative 1, I agree with Councilmember Najarian. I mean, since when do we micromanage parking, valet services? That's what valet services are for. If it's designed properly, if it's going to work, if we're being told by engineers, including our own city staff, that there's nothing wrong with it, I'm sure that it would have been brought to our attention if there was something wrong with it and if it was not implementable. But that's not the case. Why are we micromanaging this? So I'm okay with alternative 1. I'm also okay with alternative 2. If it has to be overflow parking that's off the premises, by all means, because at the end of the day, I know that it's going to be just like every other hotel in Glendale where half the parking spaces are empty most of the time. So I'll support alternative 1, I'll support alternative 2. I think alternative 3 with giving up of the TOT is not attractive.
Thank you. Councilmember Devine.
Okay, well, I've done a lot of research and questioning, and I want to thank staff because I know I overloaded you with a million questions, but you were gracious enough to answer every single one of them. One of my concerns was about the option to purchase, and you did give the answer that it is in the charter, that City Attorney, that it would have to come back to council for a 4 to 1 vote, 4 out of 5 vote in order to allow them to sell the property. About the parking, it's true that we're hearing all about Uber and Lyft and how people are maybe not driving their cars or renting cars at the airport. However, the bottom line is we have a parking code in our city, and that parking code says 1 for 1. And so it is, I feel that the constituents want us to apply those codes and ordinances that are on the books. Now, if this council feels that we should go to .8 or go to .7, then I think that code change should be brought to this council, because I think we've been trying to piecemeal and make judgments on every hotel that comes to this council. And quite frankly, it's a bit concerning to me. And I would really like to have a code that is enforceable and that is fair to the developers and to the residents. So my decisions or my determination is this, that I would not go for alternative number one. I mean, I don't know how they would get those cars out of there, and I certainly wouldn't want my car somewhere piled on top of another one. So I would like to see, I'm in favor of alternative number 2 with the terms, according to the staff report, are that they will be seeking an off-property parking agreement. Well, I would like to see those parking use permits in hand when we sign the lease, that they have secured parking off-site for the 50, 55, 56 spaces that you mentioned. I think Mr. Najarian, you mentioned that. And I would go for that, because that would be basically one-for-one parking, and that would be to code. I would also go for alternative number 3, however, with the caveat that I would not give up the TOT. So it would be your responsibility, and I see they're shaking their heads, your responsibility to build that parking one-for-one. Again, number 2 would work with me if you had that the paperwork in hand. I also want to make sure that that the public parking is, the agreement states that the public parking is metered for 24 hours a day. I believe that is in the contract, and that is something that I want to make sure everyone knows about, and that it's in the lease. I wanted to mention a little bit about the ground rent and the minimum base rent, and I just feel like that we should give them the years of construction without any rent. But I think on that 3rd year, I think that maybe we could be doing a certificate of occupancy. When they, let's see, how do I want to put this? I had to direct staff to negotiate terms that would start the rent upon issuance on the certificate of occupancy according, for instance, like $10,000 the first year, $20,000 the second, $30,000, and then the $50,000 on that 4th year. I guess just not charging them rent does not sit well with me. I just feel like we should. It is the city's property, and that's the direction that I would like for staff to proceed.
Okay.
Just want to say a few words.
Go ahead.
I think one-to-one parking, in my opinion, is the time for that is past. 2 years later, we are going to have, before this hotel comes around, we are going to have autonomous vehicles which they're not going to have any driver and people that can take it around, so it will be less of a need for, because I think I was in Sacramento, that Lyft, from the representative Lyft company was there. They were talking about that, this is their idea, that people are not going to buy as much as vehicles for themselves. The car sales will be the same thing, but more people, they use like this taxi type vehicles, not for their personal use. So obviously, if that's coming around, so the need for parking will be less. But I don't want to go to the situation that like, as I said, the alternative 1. An alternative 2 is fine with me if they can rent a space outside somewhere on a condition which I asked our lady from that I said there is a hotel that was complaining about developing the Glendale Unified School District site, and they were saying don't let them because we are using the street parking and others. And now if they want to rent I just want to make sure that we are talking different. If they're going to rent space from a church, I just want to make sure not from the same church, which we're complaining about.
No, I believe they're talking about the First Baptist Church on Louise and Wilson. That was the church, and I've forgotten the name. Methodist.
Don't mix them up.
I will not, sir. That's why I didn't say.
It's different.
On Kenwood. Different church.
So they're not going to go and rent from them. So that will be, unbelievable that one is complaining and giving space. Anyway, if it's alternative 3, which I think there is no interest on it, I would
Don't
not
discount it yet. I haven't spoken yet.
No, alternative 3, I guess, has been discussed, so I guess leave it out. I had opinions about it, but I leave it out. So, but about this business-based rent, I agree with Ms. Line that from 0 for year 1 to 5, I think we are going too far. Maybe we have to charge something during those years, not the first 2 years of construction, but afterward. And I didn't see anywhere here to be written. The TOT we will collect from the day they start operating, right?
That is correct.
So it's not written here, but I'm sure it's written somewhere, right?
Yeah, it's in the tax code, actually. They would be responsible to the state reimburses it to us.
I see. Okay. I think that's what I wanted to say.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Najarian. Councilmember Najarian. I have a question for our city attorney. The option to purchase the property, let's say 6 years, 7 years later, they approached the city, they said they want to exercise the option because the option belongs to them, right? The way it's written, it belongs to them.
Yeah, and I think, from the way I haven't been involved in the day-to-day discussion of that, and Jillian can speak to it more directly, but my reading of the section is it's not an option as what we think of an option. It's the lessee has the right to say, I'm exercising under these terms. It is a request to purchase the property. That's the way it's written. So, an option is a bit of a misnomer.
It's a request, basically. And at that time, the council, if they have 4/5 of the vote, they will sell it. If they don't have to sell it, and they move forward. How often they can come back and make that request? Is there a limit?
Every 5 years. Every
5 years.
Okay,
four
times every 5 years. Yeah.
Every 5 years, they have the option to come back and ask that. And is there a benchmark that we're going to, a floor for the value that we're going to put into the lease? And say, this is the floor because the value today is, I don't know, 4 million or 5 million.
It's fair market value appraisal.
Because it was mentioned, I'm not saying that they will do that, but when the market goes down, if the request, at that time, council has a right to say no. Okay, all right. I have a question for Mr. Alajajian.
I'm sorry.
You're the reason that banquet hall lost their parking lot.
Well, let me.
I'm just kidding. I'm just
Let
kidding.
me update you on that. If you're not aware of it, the banquet hall was parking there according to a developer illegally. They never had an agreement.
I don't want to get into that. No, I know there was an agreement.
Okay.
It was,
I take
so
the joke.
that hotel, you designed that hotel, Holiday Inn Express,
Yes,
right?
yes, we did.
What is the parking ratio there?
We're parking there 1-to-1.
Okay. And how about Aloft Hotel?
Aloft Hotel is parked 1-to-1 as well.
And do you know what the number of the parking is at Hampton Inn that was developed? Do you
I
have
have
an
no
idea?
idea. We're not involved with that.
maybe
But
city
I can
can.
tell you, you can go to Hilton Hotel or you can go to Embassy Suites the parking lot, I mean, parking structure is empty, and, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I understand. I'm not trying to argue about it. I understand your position. I just wanted to know that when you had a choice to develop it one-to-one, you built it to code, which is one-to-one, and that was my question. Okay, thank you, Mr. Judge.
May I add one
Yes,
little
go ahead.
detail here, if you may consider this too? Let's say in the future you were discussing about the purchase option. You put, you know, and parking becomes part of the hotel also. So you're going to be overparked, right? This is a question. 66 parking on top of 78, you're over.
That's something in the future that it could be discussed, that 66 parking can stay with the city, and that's something that we can discuss in the future.
Thank
It's not before us today, so. Do you have an answer for
Mr.
Hampton
Mayor, you
Inn?
had asked about Hampton Inn. It's parked at .8.
0.8, but it's not valet park, it's straight park.
Correct.
Okay, so, and the Hilton in Burbank was straight park. That's the question I asked. Look, I think we all want this project to happen. And yes, really, we do. We do. But we want to be responsible in what we approve here. And I think we need to be a little consistent about what we are approving. And the parking requirement was there from the day one that we issued the ENA. It says, replace the city's parking and park to code. It's nothing new. It's nothing that we're trying to put a burden on the developer. And I want to thank you for giving me a tour, and Mr. Al-Judge and you too as well, yesterday from the other hotel that you developed in North Hollywood, as well as the Hotel Indigo. Indigo was very eye-opening. I mean, you can see what they can do with different designs and different material. So the parking issue was there from the day one. Alternative one, it will not work for me either. I want to have my cake and eat it too. So I want to throw this out in the air. I see if there is any support for it. Alternative 3, the issue is that it's being parked to code, and the developer is asking for 2 years of TOT back, which is a lot of money. Basically, we are paying for it. We're paying for you to build to code, and basically we are replacing our own parking. That's what it would come down to. Now, in order to do that, I was looking at the numbers of the rent, percentage rent that we can generate from the 5th year on. I think if we can, and the other thing, alternative 2, if the question is for the city attorney, if they secure a site, let's say the church or any other site that they have 55 parking spaces, they have a contract with, they get into an agreement. Is that agreement has to have the same terms as their agreement with us for 55 years?
I'll have to turn to my staff. I think generally, yes. I mean, if they're going to use offsite parking to meet a code requirement, then generally, and they have to apply for a parking use permit or parking reduction, one of the two. It's generally a condition that they secure the parking for the length of the period. But they could ask for something less. They could ask for 30 years, and then the approving body, the reviewing body, in this case the council, would have to decide what's the appropriate term.
So there's an option for them to say, okay, we can secure it for 25 years today, and then 25 years later, we may not even need any parking spaces.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if we review our code in 2 months, and we bring our one-to-one requirement down to, I don't know, 0.7, that means that this hotel or other hotel is stuck with a 25-year lease for a parking space that they're not going to need? That makes no sense whatsoever.
Depends how you negotiate this lease. It depends how they negotiate their lease.
No, but his question is whether they would be required to go out and get a lease with a parking entity, with parking space that is commensurate with the time period of the city's lease with the hotel. Do you understand?
That's what they were saying. I mean, I'm not saying that. That's what they're saying. That's one of the proposals. So let's talk one at a time and have a extend the same courtesy to the rest of us. One second. Let me go through.
I want to have Ms. Sanchez explain what exactly they're proposing, in terms of option 2, how long that lease is going to be and
Well, but-
when it's going to be effective.
But my question is, if we do a code change, if council does a code change, that they can then come back or relinquish their lease for the additional parking and go by the new.
And again, that was my point to Mr. Sinani's question. It depends on the terms of the lease they negotiate with the counterparty. The counterparty may say, no, I don't want to lease you. Right, so.
Right, I mean, look, this was a question because there's an option in front of us. I wanted to know what that option is telling me. So they can.
Keep in mind a couple of things. We're at the state, we came here because there's a parking design issue that the council needed to weigh in on in open session. Couldn't have that discussion in closed session. A lot of the other terms, we kind of were moving along as part of that negotiation. So that was really the direction we were seeking from council, not the minutia of the detail of how these particular factors would work out. So I do apologize. We don't have all the answers because we wanted some broad direction on what's the design and the layout of the parking. With that said, maybe Ms. Sanchez can clarify what exactly they're proposing for that option 2.
Right, and we've asked for this, right? We asked for the direction, and it sounds like a majority are leaning towards a variation of alternative 2. So things like contingencies could be built into those lease, knowing that we're looking at this possible code change. So again, that is something that can be worked in, something that would be brought as part of your full consideration when you look at everything together. So if you're leaning towards an alternative 2 or what your thoughts were, and we've collected all of these different thoughts, it sounds like they will bring forth a version of that because of the complications that arise from alternative 1 and the options related to the TOT and number 3. It looks like number 2 really is sort of where you're moving to. And like the city attorney said, is the lease details would be brought to you to make sure that you get that comfort.
So you make a decision on the lease details at the later time?
Correct. This is very.
Closed session. Right.
Well, our lease, yeah, we would be still negotiating privately the terms of that, and what the terms of the lease are that the developer negotiates for the offsite parking. That's for them to do, and then come back incorporate that into their entitlement request, which will ultimately come to you. And so what I'm suggesting to you is I don't think we need to get into the weeds on the scope of that lease until we know what it is. How we want direction. If you like alternative 2. Generally, give us that direction, and we can go back and figure out what works.
Let's do that, and then pick the lease.
My remarks, then we'll make a motion if you don't mind.
I will not. Can I say?
Let me finish my remarks, then I'll come back to you.
All right.
Because I still think that there is a way of having the alternative 3 if we can work out. This would be an option to look into when you go back and negotiate your lease with them. There may be alternative 3 because right now after the 5th year, our rent goes up to $80,000-$85,000 a year because it's either $50,000 or rent percentage rate, whichever the one is higher, which based on the report that we have, the alternate after the 5th year, the gross revenue will be I don't want to give a dollar amount out there. So it will be like $83,000 of rent that we can generate. Year 7, $88,000. Year 8, $180,000. So our lease rate is going to go up based on the numbers and I hope and I'm sure they will do a high number so we can collect our rent. And what I'm trying to say is if you build, because they have a place, not an event hall, but they have an area that they would use for events, and Mr. Patel told me that they want to rent that out to small events. If you have 60, 70 people coming at the same time, you have to park them somewhere. You didn't say that yesterday? Okay. So what I'm trying to say, if this parking is built and the TOT, we can structure it the way that it's not paid up front in 2 years, so after a few years we can structure it the way you can look into this for your lease option. You can structure it that it's paid off in a longer time, so our rent would balance that off, and you won't have to worry. Otherwise, you are doing a 5-year lease with no revenue, and after that, they can purchase the lot and move forward. When you can start generating revenues, they would purchase the lot and move forward without you getting any revenues from it. So you just, I wanna see if there is if that would be kind of, they can exercise that option when they go back and look at the lease.
Is that a motion?
I'll move option 2.
I mean,
Alternative 2. That's
I
my
just want to
motion.
add something before.
Okay, I have a motion. But
I'll second
go
the
ahead.
motion.
Good.
With the condition that they secure.
I
the-
think that's inherent.
That was part of the
conversation, they have to do that.
Option 2. It wasn't written that way, but, because from this point forward, if you approve option 2,
That
they're
will
going to
come
go out
before
and
you.
do that. They're
I
not
wanna
going to
make
do
the
that
things
until
easier if you
council
let-
says
Yes,
that's what
sir,
you
of
want to do.
course. Put this motion.
Do you want to take a roll, or you want to listen to it?
No, I want to listen to
Okay.
it. You call the roll.
Yeah, okay. Let me say a few things, maybe we make this easier. I asked Mr. Bagdanian how many parking stalls this hotel needs. He said 112. And we know on alternative 2, level 2, it's showing 78 parking spaces. So basically, they have to go and get 30, room or 30 parking space from outside only. They don't have to go and get the balance. I'm trying to make my alternative 2 easier.
Okay.
So they have to have like 34,
So-
not to go and get the balance of 140. That's what I'm trying to do, if they agree with it. And one question I have, the price on the meter. We gonna
Yes.
On the public part,
decide
yes.
how much it's gonna be?
On the public component, yes.
Yes, that's
And
part of the
they
city.
will maintain the public parking? Who will maintain the public parking?
That's
That's still part of the
something-
negotiations.
That's something that we still need to, as part of the
Okay.
parking
Okay.
agreement.
That's fine.
But the meters
We
would
can
belong to us. We would be collecting the revenue.
today we are,
I want to make it that parking level 2, I mean the alternative 2, with approximately 30 outside parking to make it easier. I mean, that's what my.
So you accept that as a friendly amendment to your motion, Mr. Sinanian?
I accept that as a friendly
And the
amendment
seconder
to the
will also
motion.
accept that as a friendly amendment?
But I'm interested in the 1-to-1, so that would be, and they said that they
So,
could get
but-
that at the church, right, Mr. Al-Jadian?
Okay, I mean, we have a motion and a second.
We have with the
I just want to,
amendment, like a Janian amendment.
Councilmember Devine, I just want to call to your attention that when you're saying that there's a code and there's a concept called variance. That's what a variance is for. Sometimes the code doesn't quite sort of fit the needs of that particular project, and therefore people ask for a variance. And the variance provides a way to not use the code, but vary from it. So I guess
And
it
I am
obviates the
quite-
concept of variance. I mean, in a way.
And quite honestly, I'm against
Variances?
parking variances, because I
then you should
agree
have a
that
no
there
vote
is.
on
Okay,
this.
yeah.
There is,
Then you should have a no vote.
so basically what we're doing is we're going to point 8 with the idea of securing the rest of the parking spaces from an outside source, like they did with, but this is going to be all, the rest of them are park to code, straight park. They're not valid or anything. This is a.
It is subject to the council's ultimate approval
Right,
of the lease
okay.
and
So-
entitlements and the CEQA review.
Okay, I'm okay with that as well.
Valet parking will stay, because they have to take the car
of
outside.
course.
Valet parking should be part of the deal.
It is.
Is Councilmember Agajanian's motion clear? I mean, the amendment to the motion?
Yes.
About the parking.
Yeah. Option 2 with
So
30
I'm
offsite spaces.
suggesting,
What I heard, just so we're clear, option 2 with 30 offsite spaces.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
So we have a second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Council members Agajanian,
yes.
Devine,
no,
Najarian,
Yes.
Sinanian.
Yes.
Mayor Garpetian.
Yes. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speakers are allowed 5 minutes. Council may question or respond to the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. City manager may refer the matter to the appropriate department for investigation and report.
Okay, first speaker is Chinook Ramirez. Followed by Janice Skinner.
Thank you.
Followed
Caught me
by-
by surprise. Thank you very much. How much time do we have?
5.
Thank you
5
very
minutes.
much. Thank you. As I reflect on this year, 2017, I am happy. My deep wish came true. President Donald John Trump became the 45th president, and he won by a divine intervention and to finally restore America. I thank the universe every day. During his campaign election, he made 2 sacred and solemn promises, and they are to put America first, as he swore on January 20th, 2017, before the Honorable Chief Justice John Roberts, that he will faithfully execute the president's office and preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help him God. And to the American people, he will make them whole. No more second-class citizen. No more being trampled on by third world ghetto, but rightfully put the legal law-abiding citizens and our beloved United States military veterans in the rightful station in life. The Honorable President Donald Trump, El Jefe, the great Moses, has surely talked the talk and walked the walk, and he has begun to deliver as promised. Bravo! A man of his word. He embodies everything beneficial and healing, and he does have the Midas touch. This man is blessed. Our single-minded fortress of a president, Donald Trump, is not making a salary. He's not getting paid of his own volition, nor is his daughter Ivanka. He married 2 separate, beautiful immigrant women, and his family have donated millions of dollars to charities. He rightfully pardoned Sheriff Joe Arpaio, an Army veteran. Our president has had his plane pick up stranded United States military veterans to be brought home. And he helped free the 3 ungrateful, disrespectful, and spoiled UCLA African-American racist kids from Communist China's detention for being raised as thieves, and only to have his badly raised father, LeVar Ball, to trash our beloved president, Donald Trump. How about a sincere thank you? America had become uninhabitable and unsafe with a gang epidemic and the daily dose of domestic terrorisms. That is why Americans demand deportations and deportations at full throttle. No amnesty, no asylum, and no DACA. All dreamers, illegal aliens, and criminal gang felons to be deported at full throttle. ICE, 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 we love you. The American people have been subjected to sheer degradation and homelessness, poverty, massive mayhem, felony harassment, theft, burglary, grand theft, grand larceny, reckless driving, hit and run, criminal trespass, property damage, ID theft, mail theft, vandalism, graffiti, cell phone hacking, and theft, placing spyware in hotels and motels and home rentals, peephole in reverse, fear and intimidation, bullying, home invasion robberies, assault, gang stalkings, food tampering, food poisonings on restaurants and at home, false imprisonment, homicides, retaliation, pedophilia, invasions of privacy, conspiracy with the cartels and George Soros, NSA, the FBI, the CIA to destroy America. ICE, 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 deport. Build a wall with cartel kingpin El Chapo Guzman. $14+ billion as Senator Ted Cruz intelligently alluded to. Dismantle the Congress, the CIA, the FBI, the NSA, and Hollywood and their illegal wiretappings, hackings, and surveillance programs and put them all in prison. fry them. Stop the illegal gang stalkings. Implement the travel ban. Strip sanctuary cities of all federal funding. No trannies in the United States military. Enforce the rule of law. President Donald Trump and beautiful First Lady Melania Trump have ushered a majestic and splendid welcome to the United States from the rest of the world. A new era has begun. All their foreign trips, and including the Asian Summit trip, have been a magnanimous and monumental bilateral success. As a matter of fact, all the countries are copying President Donald Trump in immigration and deportations and other policies. On a positive note, China has named our beautiful, elegant, and opulent First Lady Melania Trump as America's secret weapon. And while our honorable President Donald Trump, he's been dubbed as Donald the Strong, Grand Commander. And again, I say China, Shay Shay. And again, it's almost time, and I just would like to wish our president, Donald Trump, his lovely, beautiful wife, Melania Trump, and the rest of his family, a beautiful, successful next year. And we will vote you for a second term. God bless America. God bless the United States military. God bless our pilots and Gillespie Daredevil pilots extraordinaire. God bless you all. Thank you. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Janice Skinner, followed by Monica Campagna.
I feel like I haven't spent enough time on my speech after that. Good evening. My name is Jenny Quinones Skinner, and thank you. My name is Jenny Quinones Skinner. I've lived in Glendale for over 15 years. I'm also a librarian at Cal State Northridge. And I'm here tonight also very encouraged to hear what's happening with the alternatives for the power plant. I'm here because a lot of my friends and also colleagues that work at CSUN and live in Glendale have families and kids, and I'm here tonight and they're getting ready for the holidays because city council meetings are hard to attend. But there's a lot of people in the city that want sustainable energy. We want options for what renewable energy is going to look like in the city. We don't want to move forward on a fossil fuel plant without seeing what the alternatives are. And so I do really want to urge and encourage you guys to move forward on making sure that those alternatives are made available for folks to see, that we look at the different debates of the issue, that we're well informed, and that also our busy residents in the city, like I said before, that have kids and families and jobs and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, have multiple options to kind of hear what's happening with the power plant, that the city really reaches out and we don't have just talking points from the city, but we also really look at what the issues are. So I want to thank you guys all for everything that you do for the city. Thank you for listening to me tonight, and have a really great holiday and New Year with your families. And I'm done. So thank you.
Happy holiday to you as well. Monica? Followed by Caitlin Funaro.
Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak. My name is Monica Campagna, and I'm also speaking on behalf of what the former speaker just alluded to, and that's the Grayson Power Plant. And I can't tell you how heartened I am by some of the things that I heard tonight. I feel like you guys are hearing us. Thank you so much. My whole neighborhood of the Rancho District is talking about this, and I'm here, and I'm sure there's 100 others that would be here too if they could. I have a son that attends the Franklin School, and so we live in a little ecosystem that's 1 mile from this facility. So this really is important to us. My son has had asthma for most of his life, and we've been here about 7 years now. We love it here. We'd like to stay. But honestly, if I see this plant getting any bigger than it is right now, and with all of the new emissions that it would be creating, I don't know if we can stay. It's within 1 mile, and all that stuff is going to be right around us. So thank you for listening to that point. Our family has taken advantage of your Wonderful Solar Incentives program, and we've installed solar on our roof, and we've invested in battery storage. So I planted trees, I plant plants, we've reduced our own power use. So we're doing everything that we can to make our environment cleaner and nicer, clean the LA River, everything that we can do. But we still have to breathe the same air. So it doesn't matter all these things that we're doing if you guys aren't with us and helping us to keep the air clean and make it cleaner. And I feel like now is, I'm sure you've heard this a lot, it's a golden opportunity for us to invest in something really incredible for our city
The prices are falling, as we all know. There's all these new technologies available, and I'm glad to hear that you're strongly considering that. I love the fact that Mr. Sinanian has brought up the fact that right now it's all been focused on Grayson and what Grayson thinks and how Grayson could expand. I love the idea that Grayson could be looked at as an auxiliary and that we look at what Glendale needs as a repowering, as Grayson can be part of that. And to that end, my main point tonight is to really encourage you guys to consider, like Mr. Sinanian brought up before, pausing this process and bringing in independent clean energy specialists that aren't associated with the plant, that can truly look at all of the alternatives for us so that you guys can make an informed decision that's not centered on Grayson, but that could be part of it. I read a very compelling report recently, comments from the Earth Justice. I don't know if you guys got a chance to read that yet. They, first and foremost, this new study, it needs to be based on our actual need here in Glendale. All of the proposals that have been put out in the draft EIR have based everything on higher need than we actually have. And we all know that. Part of that is because they hope to sell some of that energy to pay for that plant. So none of it was balanced. How can we know if we can satisfy our energy needs with alternative battery storage, energy efficiency, if we aren't looking at the same numbers? Earth Justice actually goes on to say that for this and other reasons, the draft EIR is actually unlawful and would be challenged in court. As they very clearly laid out, you can't purport the need for carbon offset credits, which, as you know, wouldn't do anything to help our air quality here or the earth. And you can't poo-poo the ability to meet demand with renewable energy options or even compare costs if you don't start with a level playing field. So I think we have to decide what is our need and can we fulfill that with other energy sources. So I guess I'll leave it there. Thank you so much, and I hope at the next meeting in January that you really strongly consider putting a pause on this and bringing in people that are independent, that can really give you more options. Thank you so much, Council, and have a happy holiday.
Thank you, you too. Next speaker is Caitlin Funaro, followed by Vivian Conchian.
Hi, thank you. My name is Caitlin Finero McKeown. I live in Glendale. I have two kids, 6 and 3. My older son attends Franklin, and we also live in an apartment across the street. So my 6-year-old spends almost 24 hours a day in the shadow of the 5. So this is an environmental justice issue for me and my family. This is not just existential, like this is very real to us because this is the air that we breathe every day. And I really appreciate you guys. We do feel like you've heard us, and we really appreciate the comments that you've made here tonight. And we can tell that you're taking this seriously, and we sincerely ask that you do explore all of the renewable energy alternatives that are on the table. I was at the GWP Commission meeting a couple of weeks ago when the report was presented, and I read through as many pages of the 1,500-page draft EIR as a regular resident can possibly be expected to do. And I don't feel like the renewable energy alternatives have been explored, and I don't think that the consultant that's been hired to do this project is frankly qualified or free from the biases that we would need in order to truly explore what renewable energy alternatives are. And I don't think that the pollution that we can expect from an expansion of the Grayson power plant should be referred to as minute. I think adding the equivalent of additional 90,000 cars into Glendale's roads is a pretty significant deal. And I would encourage you strongly to look really closely at those greenhouse gas particulate matter numbers, because that's what's entering my children's lungs every day. And as the previous commenter said, we love living here. I wouldn't choose to leave, but the environmental concerns and the air quality here is a really big factor for me. And Glendale already doesn't meet federal air quality standards. I cannot understand why, when California is moving towards a zero emissions future, why Glendale would not want to be part of that solution and continue to hold our state back. I mean, do we want to wait until this is a mandate coming from Sacramento, or do we want to lead and show the people of Glendale that we care about their health, we care about, you know, the economic vitality of this city, and do we need really a $500 million polluting behemoth down the street from our schools and our neighborhoods? So I'll be at the January meeting, and we really, really appreciate you hearing us, and we look forward to that measure.
Thank you. Vivian Conchian, followed by Dan Brotman.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to us today. I'm also here to talk about Grayson, and I've been a Glendale resident since I was a child. I attended Hoover. I went on to Glendale College afterwards, and I'm here tonight to ask that you please consider having an independent review firm look into alternative renewable energy solutions to Grayson. We need to find out if there are cheaper and cleaner solutions to the current plan. What's my personal interest in this? My parents live 1.5 miles away from Grayson, and building a plant like this, and should an earthquake hit, would be disastrous to them. Not to mention the nearby homes, the schools, the businesses, the nearby parks. Again, others alluded to the issue of air quality. Glendale's air quality on a scale of 0 to 100 is at 43, which is below the federal standard. And then we're talking about adding an additional 90,000 cars worth of greenhouse gases. So that, together with the pollution that would be added with this proposed power plant, given that I have a background in public health, I know would add to the numbers of asthma cases, add to the numbers of cancer cases, and having had relatives who have been diagnosed with such diseases, I really wouldn't want anybody to go through something like that if I could help it. So that's why I'm here today. So I respectfully ask that you take this opportunity to stand up for the welfare of the residents of Glendale by recommending a fair review of alternative energy options to be conducted without further delay. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you. Dan Brotman, followed by Naira Sogbatian.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Garpetian, council members, staff. I had a whole speech prepared, but I'm going to throw it out because things changed tonight. So I want to start by thanking Councilmember Sinanian for raising the point and putting something on the agenda for the, I guess it's the 20, whatever the date is, the 23rd or something like that. But I want to thank all of you. One thing that I've found is you've all been very, very open to taking time to sit down and talk through this. I've met with every one of you, I think more than once. So I do really want to thank you. It's amazing to live in a place where there is such access to decision makers and where there's so much openness. So thank you for that. The only other thing that I wanted to say is just on this question of which Councilmember Devine, you asked, you know, is there already an alternative study in the EIR? And I would say there really isn't. A couple things about the EIR. First of all, or about the whole proposal. First of all, we have to remember who put it together, right? The original proposal was put together by Pace Global. We know Pace is a subsidiary of Siemens, and Siemens is the selected vendor for this plant, okay? We also know that Stantec, who has been running the whole EIR process, is the owner's engineer on the project and would stand to gain substantial business for this to go ahead. So I don't feel comfortable relying on their analysis of alternatives. What they did, if you look at the studies, if you look at the IRP, you look at the EIR, they created straw men and then knocked them down. That's not the way it should be done. We really need to look at a broad matrix of options, including solar, including storage, but also things that are often overlooked, like energy efficiency and demand response. You know, the cheapest energy is the energy that we don't use. It's the cheapest and the cleanest, right? We don't even need to build batteries using whatever those chemicals were that you were talking about the other time, the lithium ion, right? And there are lots of techniques to get residents, provide financial incentives to get residents to shift demand to other times of the day so that we're not seeing these peaks at particular times, and we don't have to build to that peak level. We can build to a much lower level. That already, just that can reduce the scale of the problem and maybe open up completely new possibilities for using solar and for using batteries to solve our problems. So we really haven't done the kind of study that needs to be done. And one other thing, if you listened at the hearing that was done in this room, the first EIR hearing, Matthew Hale, who is one of the commissioners, asked the Stantec consultant whether they had looked at the potential of solar on rooftops owned by the city. So we're not talking about residential, we're just talking about city-owned. And the answer, and you can go back and take a look at this, his answer was, no, we have not looked at that. Now, how can you say this is an alternative study when the consultant did not even look at city properties? I think that's something to think about. So I really want to thank you once again for listening and for agreeing to be open-minded about this. And going back to the climate mayor's resolution that you passed, I was happy when you did that. But always you wonder, is it just lip service? Well, now I'm seeing it's not just lip service. I'm seeing it's real and it matters to you, and I appreciate that. So thank you. Have a wonderful holiday, and look forward to seeing you in January.
Thank you, Mr. Rothman. Naira Sogbatian, followed by Mike Mohill, and followed by Bill Wiseman, the last speaker of the year.
Good evening, dear Mayor and dear council members. My name is Naira Sogbatian. I'm not a public speaker. I'm just a person concerned with the domino effect of overdevelopment in Glendale, which also resonates with the concerns of power plant, as we heard today, air pollution, clean air need, and also the shortage of parking, especially in the residential areas for the Glendale residents. I've been a Glendale resident since 2003. For the past 15 years, I've lived across from the Glendale Unified School District at 215 North Kenwood Street. In fact, we like the area so much that my family and I bought 3 condos in this building on Kenwood. I sit on the board of directors of the HOA for our building, and I represent the voices of property owners and residents of all 30 units there. We were drawn to the area because of the quiet residential streets, the amount of green space, and the low-rise 1 to 3-story buildings, all of which constitute the character of our community and provide the much-needed physical, visual, and mental relief. On December 13 of this year, the Planning Commission deliberated on whether or not to recommend the GUSD Apartments mega development project across from where I live. Thankfully, for various considerations, the Planning Commissioners chose not to recommend this project. The entire neighboring community rejoiced. I should mention that the only supporters of the project were the developer, some school officials, the involved realtors, and a nearby business owner, none of whom live in the area or will bear the adverse consequences of the project. Since the final vote on the GUSD project will come to you on January 23rd, on behalf of the community of the adjacent buildings of GUSD, I would like to once again emphasize the importance of not allowing DSP, the Downtown Specific Plan, to expand beyond its current boundaries. As many speakers at the public hearing noted, there is a reason the borders were marked for the DSP, and those reasons included the control of the density of the population, the sufficiency of road and parking infrastructure, and the character of the surrounding community. Allowing DSP to migrate into a purely residential community such as ours will cause a permanent and irreparable adverse impact to the quality of life of the surrounding Glendale residents. The neighborhoods outside the DSP have already borne the brunt of changes incited from traffic congestion, parking problems, traffic noise, etc., that have spilled into the neighborhoods. Converting our neighborhood into a DSP zone, as sought by the developer, would only make those problems unbearable. We were promised this wouldn't happen. And one more thing, there's a trend these days to give much leeway to developers if they provide several units for affordable housing. I do not want to sound insensitive, but please do not allow a DSP zone change in our community, even if the developer provides affordable housing, because the end result of upzoning will be the same permanent damage to our community's quality of life with or without affordable housing incentive. The DSP's goal has been to preserve and enhance the existing character of the community. Please do not allow any devastating changes to the present low-rise communities of Glendale beyond the DSP zone, such as our community. Thank you, and I wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Thank you. Same to you. Do we have a meeting set up for the 23rd?
On this item, we don't have an agenda item coming forward on the 23rd. It was initially a placeholder as it related to the Planning Commission, and if the recommendation was different from the Planning Commission as it related to the December 13th meeting, then as a placeholder for the City Council meeting, we had it scheduled for possibly on the 23rd of January. At this time, we don't have that on calendar.
Okay.
During the Planning Commission meeting, we were told that the January 23 was going to be.
Thank you.
At this point, it's not on calendar.
And a point of clarification, this is not a GUSD apartment project. You can have a seat.
how
It's
it
not.
was
I know,
presented to us.
and I understand. Next speaker is Mike Mohill.
Good evening, Mayor Garpetian and council members. My name is Mike Mohill. Mayor Garpetian, the last time I came before this council, you stated the following: this and previous councils do not pay for environmental impact reports, and you were correct. Mayor Garpetian, the city staff chooses the EIR consultants so as not to show any bias. But for every mega project within the DSP, the EIR consultant was chosen by the developer. How biased was that? It's like the fox guarding the hen house. Mayor Garpetian, you further stated this council and previous councils have not approved mega projects inside or outside of the Downtown Specific Plan, DSP, in the past 3 or 4 years or more. What I find troubling is that as a real estate broker, you should know the laws of the DSP and be familiar with traffic studies. For your information, Mayor, the Downtown Specific Plan was established in 2006, and it was a pact between the city and the residents as to where the city's future growth would be established. Furthermore, the DSP agreement stated that mega construction project would stay within the DSP and not outside of into residential neighborhoods, period. Let me remind you, Mr. Garpetian, the DSP boundaries are between Colorado Boulevard North to Glen Oaks Boulevard and between Central Avenue East to Brand Boulevard. The DSP boundaries were not supposed to be a moving target that you and your council colleagues have permitted. The last mega project for which the city chose the consultant was in 2003 for Mr. Caruso's Americana project. The last paid-for traffic circulation study for the entire city was performed 41 years ago in 1976. Perhaps if we did traffic studies more frequently, the city today would be not experiencing traffic gridlock. Mr. Garpetian, the last few large-scale projects approved by you, your colleagues, and previous councils outside the DSP zone were the mixed-use mega construction project at the former Office Depot site on Broadway and Pacific. Most recently, the Aloft Hotel on North Brand, which was approved by you, your colleagues, butted against a residential neighborhood. The residents wanted council to downzone the area, and you and your colleagues, to the chagrin of the resident, refused. Also, it was only 90 days ago, you approved the Louise Hotel at Wilson and Louise Street with 147 units, and about 2 years ago, Holiday Inn Suites located at the former World Gym site. Last week, our Planning Commission disapproved the Carmel Partners' request to spot zone the GSUD property located at Jackson and Wilson. Carmel Partners was requesting to place the highest and most dense apartment building with 286 units in a quiet residential neighborhood with one lane of traffic in each direction. This would ruin this neighborhood. The GUSD project was mainly turned down because the developer stated it would not be economically profitable if the project were geared to low-cost housing. Mayor Garpetian, the state has already stated that Glendale has more than 100% met the needs for California housing. But that doesn't bother you or your colleagues. I guarantee you that another developer I guarantee you, come next year, that you and your colleagues will find another developer for the GUSD property who will be willing to develop a project that provides low-cost housing that this council is determined to provide. Mayor Garpetian, you and your colleagues need to stop upzoning and spot zoning mega projects into residential neighborhoods. You need to keep all mega construction projects inside of the DSP. The next time this council thinks about putting mega apartment complexes into residential neighborhood, think first about putting those same buildings next to your home and tell the public how happy you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mohill. I usually don't respond to the speakers, but just a point of clarification, Holiday Inn Hotel on Colorado did not come to the council to vote. None of my colleagues or myself voted for that project. The Office Depot project, it was approved before I got elected. The Louise Hotel, yes, it was zoned for it. We did not upzone that area. The EIR, I want to ask our city attorney, what is the process of EIR? Because the developer does not choose we changed the law even in DSP for the developers not to be able to choose their own consultant. So the city is choosing the consultant for the development. Am I correct?
And last year, we changed the process for selection of EIR consultants.
So we specifically changed that process to make it even more fair. And also the Aloft Hotel, yes, the Aloft Hotel was zoned for it. It was by right and no variances. Some people didn't like it. They did not ask for parking variances. They did not ask for no variances at all. It was done all straight by right. And the developer wanted to build an 18-unit. Before that, the community told them, go bring us a project with 0 variances, and he did. And as far as Carmen project, Planning Commission didn't approve this project. Planning Commission, 4-1, only one commissioner voted for it. 4-1 turned it down, and we did not upzone anything. We did not spot zone anything. This is not being done, and this council is very responsible, and we are delivering all the promises that we made to our community. So with that, Mr. Wiseman, the last speaker of the year. And please give us some presents after the thing. I don't.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff, and the public. My name is Bill Weissman from extremely windy far north Glendale. And this month is the 6th anniversary of the installation of 23 solar panels on our house. And since we've installed the solar panels, we have been what is called net producers in a net metering situation. In other words, we are currently producing more electricity than we use in our house. And when that happens, our meter runs backwards. And because of that, we received a letter recently from Glendale Water and Power. And in fact, I was just over at the Perkins building this morning to deliver a document that once a year all of the net producers in Glendale have to do, and that is to choose between how we are compensated for the excess energy we produce. There's 2 different things you can do. You can elect to choose a cash payment for excess kilowatt hours, or you could just take the kilowatt hour credit, which is essentially banking your extra electricity in the grid and using it later. Our production happens to be very seasonal. It peaks in the summer and it's at its lowest in the winter. So the credits that we gain during the summer, we use up pretty much during the winter. One of the things that bothered us a little bit about the letter this year is that it has an underlined paragraph in the middle that says if you do not elect either one of these alternatives by a certain date in January, then you're just cut off completely. You don't get any compensation at all. And I'm glad that Mr. Zern stayed to the bitter end, because I was going to suggest that it might be better and friendlier in terms of customer relations to have the default be that whatever you elected the year before should carry through to the next year, rather than, you know, making you choose every year, and if the letter gets lost in the mail or if you forget to post it or something, you're out of luck. We have, as I said before, 23 solar panels on our roof. At the time that we were getting the panels installed, we wanted to put in 30 solar panels. However, in Glendale, residential solar is constrained by your historic use. You're only allowed X number of panels, where X is computed by GWP based on your past usage. I'm here to make a modest proposal that if that requirement were to be eliminated, and if residential solar customers were allowed to put as many panels on their roof as their roof could hold, that would result in a great deal of excess electric generating capacity that would be to the benefit of the city of Glendale. I'm not suggesting that residential solar owners be compensated for everything. I would be happy to pay 80% or to get back 80% of the excess electricity. I don't want 100% of it. I'm happy to give any excess essentially free to the city of Glendale to either use locally or resell. And I think if a modification similar to what I'm suggesting could be made, it would be a good way of increasing our generating capacity. We're seeing huge technology changes, as you all know right now. We're seeing less and less emphasis on transmission of electricity from faraway places to storage of electricity. And we're seeing it not only with battery technology, but with companies that are doing things like pumping water uphill into reservoirs during the day when electric rates are cheap, and then at night allowing it to flow downhill through hydroelectric generating stations. And these are all ways of storing power rather than transmitting power. And I'm convinced that for the future of Glendale's energy production and for the future of the Grayson power plant, what we really are going to need is a combination of expanded solar energy production within the city coupled with storage capacity. San Diego Gas and Electric right now is implementing the largest battery storage facility in the country. And I think if we were able to do those things, we can maybe do a more modest upgrade of Grayson, not quite the full-blown $500 million solution that's being presented, but something much more scaled down that could be complemented by other energy sources. And want to wish everyone Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Epiphany, and we'll see you next year.
Same to you.
Mr. Wiseman, welcome to the world of generating and distributing power.
Excuse
So that's
me,
what
I
happens
just-
in, yes.
I just want to echo what Mr. Wiseman was saying, that I have solar panels and they limited me, saying we have to look at how much you used previously, and they're limiting us. So I think that's a good idea that we let people to have as many panels as they want, since we have all these panels. So this is alternative energy or clean energy, better than solar panels, but people they can generate, that would be the best. Thank you.
Also, his proposal of having the default of folks continuing with the service that they have, I think is the logical choice.
I think we should thank Mr. Weissman for ending our year on suggestions for issues that we have, and not just coming here and kind of not doing that. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
With that, I want to wish everyone a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy anything and everything you believe in and celebrate. So,
Epiphany. Armenian Christmas. Yeah. Epiphany.
Yes,
Yeah, so agreed. I joined the mayor in the felicitations and wishing everyone a very safe and happy New Year and whatever religious holiday it is that you choose to celebrate or not celebrate. I wish you that. I wish you a happy one of those.
See you in the new year.
Yeah, happy and healthy New Year. For
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to the December 19, 2017 meeting of the Glendale City Council. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmembers Agajanian.
Present.
Devine.
Here.
Najarian.
Here.
Sinanian. Here. Mayor Garpetian.
Here. Flag salute. Led
Flag
by
salute will be led by Councilwoman Paula Devine.
Thank
Please
you.
rise.
Everyone stand, please, if you would. Let's pledge allegiance together. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,